13% places. Let's have a look back though, shall we? Let's look back at stage 1. Breakaway of 6 riders went off, hoovering up points in the various different classifications, and the battles for those jerseys are still shaped by the break of 6 we had on stage 1. We all suspected it would be a sprint finish. The valleys, hills and rolling roads which took us there led to this, an Italian, Alberto Dainese, for Team DSM, getting the win ahead of Noah Hobbs. Stage 2, the weather became far more damp. We saw some white-tailed eagles, which was what that was right there, and rolled through some beautiful terrain. The wind, though, didn't half blow, and Uno X, the Norwegian-Danish team, kept smashing the peloton apart. They did it twice. Once in the crosswinds, once on the bridge, and then another Italian winner, Michele Gazzoli of Italy and the Astana, Kazakhstan. A new race leader in Noah Hobbs, the young Brit riding for the Groupama FDG Continental Under-23. The teenager taking over the race lead in the Midnight Sun jersey. And this is where they're racing to today. This is where he's going to have to try and defend that Midnight Sun jersey. Racing away from where they started yesterday through the first sprint point, where they are pretty much right now in Skadi. And relatively flat to begin with. They then take in another summit climb of Skadi Summit. That's the first of our categorised climbs of the day, as they keep going northward through 2 more classification points for the mountains, another sprint point in Selvika, and then an all-category summit finish in Havøysund. They're not massive mountains, but it'll certainly be enough to sort the wheat from the chaff in this field of 106 riders who started off today. Thankfully, everyone has stayed in the race. It was only last year's winner, Andreas Leknesund of DSM, who did not start on Thursday morning when we rolled away from Kautokeino, and he remains the only non-starter or non-finisher. Everyone else is still in the race. These were the scenes where we finished yesterday, actually, in Hammerfest. Beautiful coastal road which took us round the edge of Kvaløya yesterday to finish in Hammerfest. The riders staying there overnight and rolling out suitably wrapped up. The average temperature between Hammerfest and Havøya today is about 9 degrees, which, as we've been saying since we started this race, would be something of a shock to some of these riders. I think I mentioned yesterday at the finish that I was surprised that the Italians were going so well. Of course, both stages have been won by Italians so far, so they seem to be thriving in these chilly conditions. Looking back out across the Pinnacle outcrop as they rolled out of Hammerfest this morning. These are not live shots yet. These are all looking back. And this was our breakaway of the day. Absolutely no surprise to see our King of the Mountains in there again. Vincent van Hemelen set on keeping that jersey. And it was one of the coupe riders who was through that first sprint in first place. I'll confirm for you who that was in just a minute, because there are 2 coupe riders in this breakaway. That was the sprint at Skadi not too long ago. And it was Anton Stensby taking that one. He gets the 3 bonus seconds and the 3 points in the sprints classification. Then we came to the mountain on Skadi Summit. I call it mountain. King of the Mountains Point. It's not exactly a mountain. Nice draggy climb up to the top of the summit there. And it was our King of the Mountains leader in the peacock jersey, Vincent van Hemelen, taking 3 points there. And in just a moment, I'll update you on who is in that break. And that was definitely Vincent van Hemelen. Thumbs up from him. Job done so far. So, thank you for joining us. We have 6 riders in the breakaway once again today. In that, now that is slightly more generous. 9.2 degrees of temperature. The wind, though, once again blowing quite hard in from the same direction, in off the Norwegian Sea from the west. And there are definitely some places on this course where if the naughty boys at Uno X fancy shaking things up again and trying to split it up in the crosswinds, I suspect they might have quite a good chance. Right, in the breakaway, we know the King of the Mountains is in there again, Vincent van Hemelen, the Belgian for Team Flanders Baloise. There are 2 Team Coupe riders. There's one of them at the back, Anton Stensby, who's just won that sprint point, and he has Karsten Feldman with him, the 2 riders who ride for the Danish Team Coupe. This is Michael Reis, the Luxembourger for the French Arcaire Samsic team. And that is Anton Stensby rolling through again. This is Vincent van Hemelen, who hasn't rolled through yet. This might be indicative of who's missing a turn. We've got Ulrik Tved in there, riding for the Norwegian national team. Every day we've had at least one coupe rider in there, at least one Norwegian national team rider in there. And there is our Norwegian national team rider for today, 20-year-old Ulrik Tved. And here comes a British rider, Paul Double. I think we may have had a British rider in the break. Certainly we did on the first day. Paul Double is that Brit today, riding for the Human Powered Health team, the 27-year-old. And that is your 6 riders, just as we've had every single day this week so far. I say every single day, this is the third day of 4, but the last 2 stages we've also had a break of 6. These guys had over 5 minutes at one point. They now have, as you can see, 3.5 minutes. We have 103 kilometres to go. My name's Jez Cox, by the way, and I'm joined once again by Ian Field. Ian, this is literally like Groundhog Day, isn't it? We've got our peacock jersey in the breakaway once again in Van Hemelen, very consistent. 6 riders clear, around about 3.5 minutes of gap, and we're riding northward to the very edge of Europe. Thankfully, the weather, although it's colder, looking a bit drier today. What have you learned, Ian? What have you picked up? Because I know you spotted a few things overnight, and what do you think we're set for today?
Well, currently I've got a bit of deja vu. Same kind of scenario currently. I think the things overnight, I saw on the socials this morning actually pictures of snow on some of the team cars overnight where they stayed in Hammerfest. And also I was looking just before we came on air to the Arctic Race of Norway, the social media Twitter account is really up to date and really good if anyone wants to follow along with that. Quite a jovial feed, some good memes and GIFs being used by those guys and girls. And they were at the finish, and oh boy, we're in for some conditions up that final climb. I mean, already on paper, looking at that final climb, 2.2 kilometres in length for average gradient of 10%. And when I was looking at it earlier today, it's actually slightly longer than that. It climbs from around about 3.5 kilometres to go, but those first slopes are only around 1, 2, 3%, and then it gradually ramps into those 10, 12, 13%, maxing out at 14% gradients. And the weather has really come in on that final climb. Very exposed, a howling northwesterly wind. It's quite strong. It's up around 25, 27 kilometres an hour, and as the riders go higher, that is only going to feel stronger, and that's going to make it feel really cold at the top of that final climb. So something to think about. Almost every stage that we've seen, the weather has gradually got worse as the riders have got towards the finishing towns, and it looks like today is going to be no different.
No, we will watch that, because right now these look like lovely conditions, far better than we had in the middle of the stage yesterday, where it really did open up. Riders absolutely wrapped up completely in rain jackets and all sorts. We can at least see some race numbers today, which is always a nice thing as commentators. Yesterday, I must admit, I was scratching my head a little bit looking back at the recent history of Michele Gazzoli, and one or two of our correspondents online pointed out to me after the stage, pointed out to both of us what he's been up to over the last year, of course, because he is only 9 days back from an anti-doping rule violation. It was back at the Volta ao Algarve last year where he failed a test, and what they found in his system was rhinoflumisil, which is basically a product in a nasal spray. It's a mucosa, a sort of anti-mucosa nasal spray ingredient. On review, the UCI decided it was an unintentional anti-doping rule violation, and he was given a 1-year ban. So I think when he rejoined, I think that's where I was confused. When he rejoined the Astana team, he was in the development team for training purposes, trained with the team, but this is his first race back since that ban. And as we know, yesterday he got his first professional victory as well. Interesting, Ian, I thought actually, while we're on the topic of anti-doping rule violations. To contrast that with the news that's reaching us today, cyclocross will have fans, and I'm sure you'll have seen this, the news about Toon Aerts, of course, big cyclocross star Toon Aerts, and has already been out of the sport for over a year due to, once again, an anti-doping rule violation. He'd been given plenty of time, he and his team, to try and prove that the letrozole found in his system was from contaminated food supplement, but they were unable to do so. Now, of course, in a way that almost doesn't prove anything other than the fact that they were unable to prove that it was an unintentional ingestion of that product. It would have been a 4-year ban, but it was reduced to 2 years as the UCI accepted that it was suspected to be involuntary, although couldn't be proved. And so, unless he is able to appeal now, but unless that appeal is successful and is lodged and then is successful, he won't be allowed to race again until the 16th of February 2024. And as I said to you, Ian, obviously yourself as a former professional cyclocross rider, regardless of guilt, and we're not here to play judge and talk about, obviously there has been an anti-doping rule violation because that's what the UCI have judged it to be. I guess, guilty or not guilty, the worst possible date for a cyclocross rider to be released to start racing again would literally probably be the 16th of February. Because that's not too long after the Worlds, and it's pretty much when the last of the races have started in as well. So I just wonder, from a Toon Aerts perspective, and he has been such an exciting rider to watch over the years, whether we might see him doing a little bit more on the road next year, maybe. But it just brings us back to that thing, doesn't it? That it's not just about encouraging young professionals. Obviously, everything we're talking about is encouraging young professionals not to cheat. But it's not just that, is it? It's about almost worse than, I'm digging myself a hole here, but for an individual, there's almost one thing worse than cheating, and that is not intending to cheat at all, and yet serving an anti-doping rule violation ban, because all people see is the word doping. And if you didn't intend to cheat, I'm not saying that's the case, I'm not saying that is or isn't the case with anyone, but if you didn't intend to cheat at all, and it really was a complete mistake, a lot of people only see the word doping, don't they? And that is, if that is an individual who hasn't intended to dope, it becomes a very heavy weight hanging around their neck, doesn't it?
Exactly, and it will carry through the entire careers of both riders. Obviously, Gazzoli's back faster than Toon Aerts will be back, but like you explained, the fairly similar situations according to the riders, but obviously one was able to prove it was completely unintentional, and Toon Aerts wasn't able to. He was able to find the food supplement that he had used and prove that contained contamination, but he was unable to prove with a sealed version of the product that it was in fact in there as well. So yeah, tricky situations, and both ended up being given bans, and I think it just falls on the rider's shoulders. It's down to the rider to monitor everything that goes into their bodies, and there's a really good website where you can enter literally the product name. You don't need the specific drugs names to enter, and immediately it tells you whether you're allowed it in competition, out of competition, not at all. So it's down to the rider. It's always down to the rider. Check products, check supplements, check everything that you're putting into your body to make sure this kind of thing never happens.
So Ian and I just touching on the kind of the breadth of detail involved with anti-doping rule violations, and I was about to say professional riders need to ensure they are fully understanding everything that breaks the barriers of their body, skin, mouth, blood, and otherwise. It's actually not just professional riders either. Anyone who holds a membership of their national governing body within cycling, I'm not even sure, Ian, it has to be a racing licence. I think it's just being a member of that organisation. Certainly in Britain, that means that you could be required by the national governing body to give a sample or to be tested. And so really, the obligation is on anyone who holds a racing licence. Amateur, professional, weekend rider, sportif rider, gravel rider, whatever it might be, to be fully aware of what is passing their system. The website that Ian Field mentioned just now, and this is really important because Ian and I are both involved with helping to develop young riders and advising people on their journeys. It is Global DRO. I think it's globaldro.com, but if you Google Global DRO, the letters DRO, Global DRO, you'll find that website where you can put in the country you're in, the product or the medicine you're taking, whatever it might be, and it will be able to, should be able to tell you whether or not you are safe using it. And it does include some batch details, as does the Informed Sport website. That's one to check any supplements you might be taking along the way as well. It's important we mention it though, isn't it, Ian? Because we are talking to people, many of whom do take part in competitive cycling at loads of different levels, and competitive sport, other sports as well. So just being informed as to how you find things out. It is not just the professionals who need to be careful about it. It wouldn't be the first time in recent years that we read through the cycling press about riders in their 70s and 80s being found to be in contravention of anti-doping regulations, and I think sometimes people find that, I certainly have seen people who find that quite amusing. It isn't amusing, because it's something that, if it is unintentional, stays with you forever, and if it is intentional, proves that our anti-doping regulations are working to an extent. Anyway, enough about that. We maybe gone on about it too much, but some news today anyway about riders, and yesterday's winner too. Breakaway, just under 4 minutes. They are getting closer. But basically, they spend the first 74 kilometres going eastward. We are at the point now where they're just about to turn back on themselves. They're riding literally from west to east across the most northerly part of Norway, and they're riding out on exactly the same route. This exact same route on the I think it's E94. They follow exactly the same route tomorrow from Kvalsund on the final stage. They'll get to Oldefjord, where they are pretty much right now, a breakaway anyway, and they'll peel right. Today, they peel left. That is how this weekend's Arctic Race of Norway stages go. Today's one goes westward and follows the west coast to the far north of Norway. Tomorrow, we go eastward and we go even further north, but following that east coast as well. Now, that should mean that tomorrow is a little bit more protected from the wind, because as we know, these winds are blowing in very hard from the west. So my suspicion, Ian, and I don't know what you think it is, but my suspicion is that today might be the one most susceptible to those crosswinds, and that tomorrow we might get a little bit more protection to the slightly bigger hills over to the east of Norway, and the fact that the wind has blown right across the peninsula by the time it gets to them. By the way, that peninsula they're riding up, I'm going to have a crack at the name of it now. I might do it twice, but no more than twice. Are you ready? Porsanger Halvuja. Porsanger Valhuja. There you go, I've done it twice now, so I don't need to do it anymore. That is the name of the far northern part of Finnmark, which is the county we're riding up through here. Today, up the west side. 4 minutes, over 4 minutes now for the 6 riders out front. I'll remind you again who they are. 3 Norwegian riders. The Norwegian national team rider is Ulrik Tvedt. He's right at the back there with that. It's very smart Norwegian kit. I've always thought it's so simple and smart, their national kit. Black shorts, red top with the stripes across it. The other 2 Norwegians are Karsten Feldman and Anton Stensby, the 2 Team Coop riders. The taller one is Karsten Feldman at the back there right now. Just rolling backwards in the easily recognisable blue and yellow shorts with the Balois on the back is Team Flanders Vincent van Hemelen. He's the best placed rider in here on general classification. He is, of course, the virtual leader on the road right now as well, because he started the day just 11 seconds down on the race lead, which is held by the young Brit, Noah Hobbs. Also in here, Michael Reis. He's the lowest placed on general classification, the Luxembourger, riding for the French Arkea Samsic team. And then Paul Double, the Brit, who's riding for Human Powered Health. Ian and I mentioning yesterday that team certainly isn't announcing that they aren't continuing, but they are certainly in a bit of difficulty at the moment. Their women's team, I believe, according to their press officer, Oscar Skarsbrook, is safe. The men's team is still searching to find a solution to see if it can save itself for next year. Just talking about news, Ian, bad news this morning. So much happening in terms of riders moving and that kind of thing, but news that the women's team, EF Education Tibco SVB, have announced today that their riders are free to look for other berths for next year, because it does sound like that team is not going to be continuing. Alison Jackson, such a massive part of American women's racing over the last, 20 years, announcing that they have not yet found a replacement for the sponsor. we'll come back to that in a second. They're our jersey holders, wearers, I should say, for today, because Noah Hobbs is leading in the yellow jersey competition, the general classification. He's also leading in the points classification, but that's worn by Alberto Dainese, stage 1 winner. Vincent van Hemelen wearing the peacock jersey. And the under-25 jersey is also worn, well, should be worn by Noah Hobbs, our race leader, but it's being worn by Gazzoli. Sorry, I'm flitting around giving all sorts of information here, but Ian, more bad news today about EF Education Tibco SVB at a time when women's racing is really taking off. And I don't know, maybe it reflects what we were saying yesterday about how at grassroots level and kind of national level in Britain and in America, things aren't quite as rosy at the moment.
No, I think they've been hit hard. I think I saw earlier in the year SVB was announced that it'd gone bust or been taken over, bought out. Don't know the 100% details, so I knew that money wasn't going to be there next year. And I think I'm right in thinking that EF Education Easy Post want to do their own women's team as such, so kind of come into the fold of the men's team kind of set up. And so yeah, the current holders of that license won't be able to continue as a World Tour team. So whether EF take that on themselves and set up their own women's team, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. But another rider caught up in that is the young Brit Zoe Backstead, and I'm sure she'll be one of the lucky ones, obviously a star name on that team, who will be kind of picked up by probably any other women's World Tour team. Will be looking to sign her if EF Education don't kind of step up and do their own sort of women's team. But yeah, it goes out to the riders and also all of the staff who are involved with that team and that setup, who will have lost their jobs kind of overnight as such. It's obviously going until the end of this season, but yeah, it's not great. And hoping just some sponsors can come in and pick up that available license and make sure those people stay in jobs and stay racing at the highest level.
Yes, thank you, Ian, for that update. You're absolutely right. Apologies, by the way, to everyone, because I kind of feel like I'm just giving bad news to everyone at the moment. But just rattling through what's coming in on our feeds, picking up what's going on in the world of sport as we watch our breakaway of 6 going through their feed zone. Look how well wrapped up the team carers, or the Swannies are, as we sometimes call them. Plenty of layers on there as well to ensure they stay warm out on the road. Now, we're watching the front of the peloton, and it's actually quite familiar pictures as the Israel Premier Tech come up. Little Trek showing keen interest on this. What's this about, Ian? Because I know we're coming to, well, maybe that's it. It's the change in direction, is it, as we turn left onto this westerly road? Are we anticipating some wind, maybe?
Big crosswind at this point. And I think it's one of those situations, probably everyone had it marked down overnight in the team meeting that there's a big change of direction coming up, and so you need to be well positioned. You need to be all at the front for this one, ready in case anything kicks off. But right now it looks like everyone was just kind of doing that thing that I mentioned yesterday about race radio sometimes making it more dangerous than it is. Everyone being told to get to the front. You have to be in position for this point in the race, because you're worried about another team putting it in the gutter, kicking things off. But what actually happens is there's a huge race for that turn, and no one has it down as the plan today to split things this early. We saw yesterday things splitting super early, still around about 90 kilometres to go. But in the end, it kind of more or less all came back together. 70 riders went up that final climb all together, so only around 30 riders were dropped out the back during those crosswinds. But as we see now, as we climb, you were talking about yesterday, the stage tomorrow, whether it'll be a bit more sheltered. As soon as the riders start climbing in this area of the world, they come up out of that tree line, as we saw yesterday. As soon as you go up any sort of rise, the wind just buffers the riders really hard. They will kind of bear a little bit more round to the east for the next few kilometres, and then it is a big hard turn into the northwesterly, with around about 75 kilometres to go. And I'm expecting from that point, every time we go high, there's going to be breaks in that peloton.
I actually think, Ian, our breakaway have already taken that turn and are heading northwestward. They're following the Mutkechqua River, which flows between various sort of medium-sized fjords along this road. It's a long one, and it picks up a couple of different rivers en route as well that converge in the valley that they're riding down. As they continue to do so, they pick up some much bigger fjords, and they lead towards the next of our hills as well, which kick off after the next sprint point in Lillefjord. I've got some wonderful entries in our road book again today, our guidebook, that I'm going to read as we go, because they're lyrically beautiful and they give you a really good indication, a good description of basically what we're seeing and what's going on around here, because it's as we go more and more north, it's even more sparse and spread out, and we are looking mostly at little collections of indigenous Sami people's fishing villages, fishing huts and hunting lodges and that sort of thing, and then of course shepherds' huts as well, where they're looking after the Sami reindeer, which we've been seeing en route along the way as well. We had a very much animal-filled day yesterday. Thank you to our ornithological correspondents, by the way, who got in touch, because yes, I know one or two of you thought it was hilarious that the best I could do at one point was, well, Ian and I have to say, both of us, suggesting that what we were looking at was a big bird. And the Sesame Street reference from one or two of you on social medias was most unkind and slightly unfair, but the correspondence was useful, because said big bird, it turns out, was a white-tailed eagle. Now, I do think I said it was an eagle, and I think I mentioned it had a white tail, and it was a white-tailed eagle, apparently. Apparently the smaller one, though, that landed in the tree that I wasn't certain about was a rough-legged buzzard. So a slightly larger... Didn't I not say, oh, you wait and see, I'll call it a buzzard and it'll be an eagle? But it actually was a buzzard, but bigger than the sort of common buzzard that certainly we're used to seeing in the United Kingdom and across much of mainland Europe. It was a rough-legged buzzard. The other bird we saw a little bit later on, just to finish off bird chat, was apparently, and I'm not sure of this, but this is what I was told last night, a golden eagle in Arctic plumage. It was kind of like white with light feathers. So there we go. Bird chat done, probably, for the day now, as well as our peloton make their way through that same feed zone. Day 3 of 4, Ian. Will anything have changed about the complement of food, especially because it's that much colder today? Or is it just exactly the same? It's just getting those carbs in, is it?
I think it'll be very similar. Don't really want to change anything during a stage race, perhaps. At this stage in the race, though, local Swanee's picking up some local produce from the supermarkets might give some slightly different takes of sugar, slightly different sugary drinks. I'm sure in Glasgow the riders were on the Iron Brew, and I'm sure there's some local delicacies in this area.
Yeah, certainly in the commentary box in Glasgow, we were constantly being provided with Iron Brew. I've never drunk so much of the stuff. It does keep you going, though, I'll give you that. Seems to work. Anyway, we had enough chat about Glasgow and the world, so we're going to limit that today, I think, a little bit, despite the fact we have just seen the biggest cycling event in history in Scotland. As I mentioned, only 10 riders in this field of 106 who rode in the elite worlds. There were some as well who rode in the under 23 worlds. I haven't tracked back yet and worked out that number. The gap's gone out again, possibly due to the... well, actually, I'd have thought it might have come down a little bit as well, Ian, maybe, what with all the pushing at the front and the colour blocking and the formations we saw forming at the front of our peloton, but not yet. It's going out, isn't it? 5:19 now, 5:20 for this leading group of 6. They're definitely working well together.
I think it did come down just before that junction, but like we said, there was that kind of race for the change in direction, but then once we turned and everyone realised that nobody was going to try and split the race there, and the feed just coming just after, everyone had slowed down, really making sure that they were able to pick up food for the following 85-90 kilometres of this stage, and that's just allowed our breakaway to eke out that gap ever so slightly up to 5.5 minutes now, but I'm sure, as we see now, I was just about to say, I'm sure one of the bigger World Tour teams is going to come to the front in a minute just to try and stabilise things ever so slightly. You see the riders really wrapped up. Israel Premier Tech rider in second place with the buff on, long fingered gloves, arm warmers. Are they leg warmers or knee warmers? Pulled all the way down to the long socks, and yeah, so it hasn't got any warmer. In fact, it's getting colder as we head north over the duration of this race.
There's a look at the Israel Premier Tech team. Dylan Tuns, their leader, who has looked pretty good. At the finish yesterday, he was in 9th place, same time, of course, as our winner, Michele Gazzoli. We wondered what kind of... Yeah, I think you said it, Ian, didn't you? Which version of Dylan Tuns will we get? Dylan Tuns at his best... well, he's a former winner of this race, isn't he? Former winner overall, the only former winner here, and two-time stage winner as well. He was the general classification winner in 2017, and that year he won 2 stages of the 4. So that's purely indicative, isn't it, of the kind of Dylan Tuns we had then. He looks like 7 out of 10 Dylan Tuns at the moment, because that's moderate, because when he's 10 out of 10, he is unstoppable, particularly in a field like this and a race like this with its uphill finishes as well. But potential stage winner today, I don't know what you think, Ian, but we are, I think, increasingly calling this the Queen's stage, but with a bit of caution, because last year's final stage of the Arctic race of Norway, it really kicked off, and I suspect that's going to happen tomorrow anyway. But on paper, this finish looks that little bit harder than the total of tomorrow's longest stage. The bookies, from what I saw, seem to have Tobias Johannesson of the Uno X team down as the big favourite today. I don't know what you've seen and what you think, Ian, and also how hard that finish is.
Yeah, looking at the stages, what we have left, it's 2,183 metres of climbing today versus 2,053 tomorrow. So not much in it in terms of overall climbing across the 2 stages. Obviously a little bit longer tomorrow, so metres per kilometre will be slightly less, and they don't finish up a climb as such tomorrow. The climb is very close to the finish, but over the top it rolls and dips and dives a little bit before the finishing line, whereas today they climb all the way to the line. So I think today's the day where there's no opportunity to come back after the final climb. It's a race all the way to the line, and that final climb is going to be brutal. 2.5 kilometres as such, and 10% average gradient, as we see the white-tailed eagle.
You got it. Our ornithological correspondent there, Ian Field. Yep, the white-tailed eagle. Clip that up. You make yourself look very, very clever. I wonder if it is the same one. You're right, because we're not far off where we were yesterday at the point where we turned in here. We're retracing our steps a little bit, although now we're going further north. Losing some feathers en route there as well. Feel a little bit awkward about our helicopter following it. Yes, it is losing feathers from its white tail. What a beautiful creature. Absolutely stunning. But what a landscape to hunt over as well. Picking out, I don't know, I guess rabbits and various other things from the tundra. Ian, I've just realised what else it might be picking out. Muskrats. Apparently, in my research, and it's the first time I've mentioned it in this race so far, muskrats have been making a comeback, increasing gradually since the 1990s. And in recent couple of years, really growing in numbers. Do you know what a muskrat is?
A small rodent-y sort of thing?
Yeah. It's like a small beaver. Like small to medium-sized beaver. And they live in kind of beavery conditions as well, damp, of which there is masses around here. But I suspect the white-tailed eagle is rather keen on a crunchy muskrat as a mid-afternoon snack. Anyway.
Look into that final climb. It is a block headwind, which isn't great for an attacking race. That might nullify things ever so slightly, which from a spectator's point of view, from my point of view, is a little bit disappointing. But given the gradients are so steep, I would have thought that if someone is quite a bit stronger, they're going to be able to make the difference on those slopes. It won't be as easy as if they had a tailwind. It would obviously suit the out-and-out climbers, the pure climbers, to come to the fore on that finishing climb and be able to pull decent gaps, I would have thought, over that distance and gradient. But with that headwind, it will nullify things ever so slightly, but I'm still expecting it to completely break up on that final climb. One person that we did just see at the back of the bunch, and I did want to point out overnight, Odd Christian Eiking, who I had down as a potential GC threat in this race. The Education Easy Post rider who's riding for the Norwegian national team. He lost 4 minutes 50 yesterday, so not a good day for him. As we see Danny Navarro, the 40-year-old. When I was doing the research for this race, I presumed that there must be another Danny Navarro because he couldn't possibly still be racing. But no, there racing, he is,
yeah.
40-year-old. Just upping that average age ever so slightly, because the average age, as we were speaking about yesterday, must be one of the youngest for any race on the UCI calendar. Every rider you seem to click on for this race is around 20, 22 years of age. So, yeah, good to see him still racing for Burgos BH.
Yeah, he's had a very long career. Turned pro back in 2005 with Liberty Seguros, the Worth team. Before then, going through Astana for 4 years, Saxo Bank, Sungard, 2 years with Saxo Bank, and then a long time, what was it, 7 or 8 years with Cofidis, before Katusha, Israel Startup Nation, and now Burgos BH. So he's had a long old career. Stage winner at the Vuelta. A couple of top 3 places on Tour de France stages as well. That stage in the Vuelta in 2014, probably the top of his palmares, but very experienced professional. And I guess to a certain extent, Ian, you can't. It's not just his qualities as a rider, but it's that experience, having ridden so many of these races, that he can pass on to the other riders there at Burgos BH, that shows its worth at that age.
Yeah, exactly. There won't be much within a bike race that he hasn't seen before. So passing on that knowledge to the younger riders within that team, is invaluable. It's almost like having a DS with you in the peloton. Looking ahead to this final climb, I think looking at the teams that are grouped well together at the front of this one, Cofidis. I mean, looking at out-and-out climbers, Guillaume Matin has got to be one of the favourites for today's stage, and perhaps to move up in the GC battle as well.
Yeah, you'd think it would be a finish that would suit him really well, wouldn't you, Martin? Let's see, though, we haven't seen too many indications that he's absolutely flying yet, despite the fact that his team have been trying to keep him up and out of trouble. Notably, Uno X staying out and out of trouble on the back of the main peloton. They're not doing what they did yesterday, where they set the pace absolutely all day and didn't in the end actually have that much to show for it either. No, different tactics from them today. Completely different tactics, isn't it, Ian, from Uno X? Didn't leave the front yesterday. Weirdly enough, didn't leave the front until really about halfway through, the last 2K, when everyone else started pushing to the front. And I asked the question, I think, what are they going to have to show for it, other than making the stage so hard for everyone else? Now, I guess if Tobias Johannesson wins today, then we could maybe say that they weakened people yesterday. But it's quite a long way out to be playing a tactic like that, isn't it?
It is, and I think they will be disappointed with what happened yesterday. Riding so hard and riding so well as a team for the entire stage, and like you say, at the front all day long until it really mattered, and that very final kick up to the line. And Johannesson, was he 8th in the end, something like that, around the top 10, but certainly wouldn't have been the result that they would have been looking for after putting in so much work to split the peloton initially, but also to keep their riders well positioned, and even trying to split it once again over that bridge towards the end of the stage. But completely different today. I'm sure they would have sat down last night and all had tired, heavy legs, and when the DS got out his little tactics book, I'm sure they'd have all put up their hands and said, I've got tired legs after today. Can we have a bit of time off as such? So they probably highlighted some key points within the stage today of where they need to be at the front, where they need to be driving it, where they need to be expending that energy, but also marking down where they can relax, where they can take some recovery, take on some fuel, and kind of really think about trying to win this bike race overall, because I do think it is just going to come down to that final climb today up to the finish.
The aforementioned DSs of Uno X, Leonard Snooks and Jesper Mørkøv, giving the advice to those Uno X riders. as I said yesterday, not just took control of the front, but at times, whenever there was an opportunity to smash it, absolutely split the race to pieces as well. So, keep an eye on the track front today. It seems almost deliberate, though, that they are sitting back as well. So, continues to be there. This is DSM, though, who've certainly been up there, near the front for, both of the first two stages, just sitting in second or third. Michael Dainese is wearing that blue Porsche jersey once again. You see his what? Space. So much welcome back, those of you who've just been away from the break. This is our race leader, Hobbs. Wearing the Midnight Sun jersey underneath that winter rain and wind jacket that he's wearing there as well. Young Brit, so consistent so far, possibly surprising a few people with that second place on stage 1 behind Alberto Dainese. Backing it up yesterday by picking up bonus seconds very comfortably too late on in the race. We've already had one set of bonus seconds go today at Skadi, won by Anton Stensby of Team Coop in our breakaway. Won't make too much difference to the general classification at the end, of course. Stensby is second best placed of the riders in our breakaway. Vincent van Hemelen is the best placed of the 6 riders that we have clear. We've gone over one mountain point. This is a particularly hilly day. As we said, it's the hilliest of all 4 stages because we have 3 more climbs to come, including the highest category climb, which is our finale, up onto the island on Havøysund as well. So let's not forget King of the Mountains points at the finish itself. There's a lovely shot. There's a wonderful place to park your motorhome as well for a while and enjoy the race passing. Just in case, this being Saturday, this might be the first time you're joining the race. We have 18 teams. We've got 6 world teams, including DSM, Cofidis, Arkea Samsic, Team Jayco Alula, the Astana Kazakhstan team, who got the win yesterday, and Lidl Trek, the American team. And then we have 8 pro teams from the 2nd division, 3 continental teams, and they are Team Coop, Equipe Continental Groupama, and Trinity Racing, the British team, and then the one national team, of course, which is the team of Norway, been in the breakaway every single day. This is the chase, 5 minutes down. Israel Premier Tech are the boys in light purple, white, and dark blue who are leading that chase. So maybe that indication, Ian, is that they're feeling confident about Dylan Turn's chances today, Israel Premier Tech. Or is it Stevie Williams? There's a good question. Actually, although Dylan Turn's has looked good, he was 9th yesterday. Where was Stevie Williams in that finish yesterday? 16th, so a little bit further back. Both good options, so they have got 2 really good options for a finish like this, but for the GC as well.
They have, and looking at the results, I think Dylan Toynes is perhaps the GC guy that they're going for. We saw Stevie Williams going for that bonus sprint on the first stage, but then Dylan Toynes going for the actual finish line sprint. So, yeah, be interesting to see who kind of perhaps just has the legs today. See who has the legs up the climb out of those 2 riders. I'm sure that climb will suit maybe Stevie Williams a little bit more. He is the lighter rider as such, but given that headwind, it might turn into a bit of a kind of more torquey affair, a big gear roller. So perhaps a Dylan Toynes. It's obviously won Flèche Wallonne before Moidahuri in 2022, but as we've been discussing, which Dylan Toynes is going to turn up today, do not know, as we see yesterday's Gazzoli, winner of the stage, took out a really impressive win yesterday, sprinting away with his teammate Scaroni in second place. Sure, Astana absolutely delighted with their work yesterday.
Yes, they were both delighted yesterday, Ian, weren't they? Sorry, folks at home, by the way, I've had a few sound problems today. In fact, I'm having what we often describe as a mare, a right old mare with my sound. I think that sounds a bit better. I can almost hear myself better as well, which is never a good thing. Yes, Astana, what a day yesterday. And I'm sure it was... we do wonder every now and again, don't we, in what sort of feed some of the race directors are watching in the cars behind. And I had been suggesting we might... I think on day one I said, wouldn't be surprised if we don't see too much of Astana. One of those races they just float through. And sure enough, they've had Garfoli riding well, and then Michele Gazzoli sprinting to the win yesterday as well, ahead of Christian Scaroni. So 3 of their riders bang on form as well. Surprise, surprise, 3 Italians as well on that Kazakh team. So all 3 of them seemingly thriving in these conditions. At least we've got something that looks a little bit more beautiful today as well, because yesterday, despite the incredible landscape we were rolling through, it was a little bit bleak and looked miserable. We would. I mean, for the last 40k, all we had was riders desperately trying to sort their hands out, wasn't it?
Yeah, there were some truly awful conditions that the riders had to deal with. I'm just hoping the weather at the finish has lifted ever so slightly, because I did see before we came on air that some images from the finish line, the weather had really drawn in, that wind was whipping in some rain. But right now, bathed in sunshine, obviously still very cold with that biting wind coming from the Arctic Circle. Oh, they're in the Arctic Circle, but literally coming from the North Pole at times, whipping into the riders. You see those kind of windproof, showerproof tops being worn by an awful lot of the riders, even long sleeve gloves being used by a lot of riders in the peloton who are perhaps not working quite as hard as our breakaways with the breakaway. Some of those even with bare hands, legs on show, etc. So it just shows the difference between how hard these riders are working within the peloton and within our breakaway today.
The riders are riding along the county road 889. It takes them from Cockelv to Havasund, where our finish is today, of course. To get to Havasund, they've got to go across the Havasund Bra, which is the Havasund Bridge, to take them onto it. Very similar to yesterday, finishing on an island, a big rocky outcrop just off the far northern part of the mainland here at Havasund. And it gives me a good opportunity to read from that guidebook about the direction we're headed in. We've just left Lillefjord. Lillefjord itself, and I'm reading directly here, by the way, there's no point in me trying to translate this because it's so well written. Lillefjord is a coastal Sami village that, despite its depopulation in recent years, appears well-groomed and idyllic thanks to the permanent residents and people who use the old homes as holiday lets. Just before Lillefjord, you can observe the local Sphinx, a large rock formation that sends your thoughts back to ancient Egypt. We haven't seen that yet, but you might go back and see it in shots at the end of the stage. At the far end of Lillefjord, the landscape extends into a riverbed, which is where we are right now, where you can also see a fantastic waterfall. The next settlement we're headed towards, just after Lillefjord, is Latter. And I'll read to you a little bit more about Latter when we get to it, and talk to you a bit about the Krokelv Valley and the little fishing villages extending alongside it as well. It is stunning, and I'm pleased to say much clearer today as well, so we can see further through this vast landscape, which in the valley where we are right now, and we're climbing up to a little bit of a plateau, is a little bit more tree covered, but either side of it really open, quite exposed as well. Where we're heading to in Havøysund, it is all about fishing, as is the area around North Cape as well, where we get to tomorrow, of course, because it extends right the way out into the Norwegian Sea, and then north of it, the Barents Sea as well, of course. We've got some interesting riders in that breakaway, Ian. Paul Double, from a British perspective, is one of them. He signed with Human Powered Health last year as a trainee, having been racing. Well, he races an under-23 with that team I mentioned yesterday, the Italian team, Team Colpack. Had a good year with them, and then spent another 2 years, I think, racing with another Italian team, if I'm not mistaken, MGK, Viz, they're called, before getting a trainee spot at the end of last year with Human Powered Health. This could be such a shame for him at this stage in his professional career. Obviously, still very early days. If Human Powered Health is to fold, the men's team that is, at the end of this year, because despite the fact that Paul Double is 27 years of age, it's always nice to see, and you'll know what I mean by this, it's always nice to see riders turning professional a bit later in their racing life, if you know what I mean. We're so used to seeing all these teenagers, as we're seeing every day in this race, in the breakaway, but he is living proof that there is still a way into the highest echelons, literally, of our sport, later in your 20s.
Absolutely, and yeah, he grew up racing in Italy, in Italian teams, as well as, like you said, with that Colpack team in 2019. And the problem is you're coming through such kind of elite junior and under 23 teams. I was having a quick look at the roster of the Colpack team in 2019, and he graduated with Bajoli and Covey. So yeah. It's really difficult to stand out from those teams. Obviously, those two riders were picked up by World Tour teams, have gone on to do a lot with their careers, and Paul's kind of drifted with Human Powered Health now. Seems to be a bit of a Tour of Slovenian specialist. So last year he finished 7th overall, and this year he was 8th overall. And given the talent on show at the Tour of Slovenia both years, when you look at those GCs, there are some serious rides that he put in there. And also looking at social media, I saw, I think, beginning of this year, early season perhaps, he took the KON on the Rocacorba climb around Girona, and the number of pros that have done efforts up there have tried to take that KOM. So it just simply shows like the physiology of that rider and how good he is. But right now he's probably desperate for results to back up his CV, to back up his Palmares, to try and get kind of names signed on a dotted line for next year. And this is maybe the opportunity. I was expecting him at the beginning of the week to go for the GC, but then yesterday he lost 7 minutes 29 seconds. Whether that was in those crosswinds through poor positioning, he's obviously a climber, so perhaps struggled in those crosswinds to get into a good position. But that has given him kind of an opportunity today to get in the breakaway and show what he's got as he comes to the front of this breakaway now. So it'll be interesting to see what he can pull off, whether they're given a little bit more leeway towards those final climbs. Perhaps he could sneak away and get that big result that he's looking for.
Yeah, it's possibly as well. I mean, I'm sure we'll see this. I wouldn't be surprised if we see this with a lot of the Human Powered Health riders, with this uncertainty about their team. It might just be all the motivation they need to be performing really well, being seen, being evident, being right up there as well. Certainly, he's the one with the opportunity today to get up the road. It was Ben Perry, the Canadian for Human Powered Health, who was in the break on stage 1, wasn't it? Neither of them getting the big result just yet. Their best finisher yesterday. Ooh, looking down for the best finisher from Human Powered Health yesterday. You might shout in if you spot it before me, Ian. I don't think we had anyone in the top 25 unless I've missed it. Which is a bit of a surprise, actually, for them. They seem to be really motivated this week. And we'll come back to that and have a little look, maybe.
Just things getting a little bit more nervous in this peloton. Those crosswinds going up to some exposed roads along this section, and so Uno X just moving to the front, and we see the Norwegian team moving up as well. So we see, is this a problem for Guillaume Martin? No, just back to the car for something, and taking a teammate with him just to help him back onto the back of the peloton so he doesn't waste any energy before the vital points within this stage.
Yes, not just any teammate either, the teammate, Thomas Champion, who's this ideal team worker. Big, tall rider, loads of shelter behind him, super strong, very attentive too. So he drops back with Guillaume Martin, rides him back on as well. So the fact that we're looking at Martin, suggesting that he's going to be one of those riders to keep an eye on today too. We will keep an eye on the Frenchman. We know his quality. He was, 9th or 10th at the Tour this year, Martin, as well. 10th on GC at the Tour de France. Now, do you know what? They're the sort of words that we don't hear often enough, do we, Ian? 10th on the general classification of the Tour de France. When you think about it, that is seriously impressive, particularly for a French rider as well. After 3 weeks of racing, biggest race in the world. He's found a consistency in his career, which maybe unfortunately is just below, maybe a rung or so below the highest level, but very consistent.
He is, and that was backing up a real solid 6th in GC at the Dauphiné just before the Tour. So, yeah, there or thereabouts, but I'm sure he'd be wanting to be a little bit further up on those GC battles, and kind of winning these sorts of races should be high up on his priority list, really, because it's a good opportunity to learn to win bike races. It's very difficult learning to win at the biggest races in the world, but today he has that opportunity, and I'm sure Cofidis will go all in to try and help him.
Well, it was the time trial stage, I think the final stage actually of the Tour of Denmark today. I wasn't sure it was finishing today, but we didn't bring it you on Eurosport 1, so we're going to bring you a little clip of it now, in actual fact. I think we're just about to go over to it. Here we go, and we're on board with Mads Pedersen. We're not going to see too much of this, and as I say, it is a spoiler alert, by the way, folks at home, but the reason it's a spoiler alert is because we're on Eurosport right now and we weren't able to bring you live coverage of this, so do look away if you're intending to watch it later. We're watching the former road race world champion, Mads Pedersen, who we know is a very good time trialist too. It's a short one, 16 kilometres. Søren Vanskjold, the Norwegian, was holding the lead until Mads Pedersen opened up his sprint to the finish and took it. In doing so, the Dane took both the time trial stage and the general classification. What a ride by such a versatile rider as well. There we go. I do hope those of you who didn't want a spoiler looked away. If you're very annoyed with me, please don't. Please don't call me out on social media. I am merely relaying to you things that are going on, because this is a very, very busy week. The Tour of Denmark, as I said, they're coming to a conclusion. Jose Bean and Brian Smith have been bringing viewers that at the home of cycling, Eurosport GCN. Of course, there's the Vuelta a Burgos as well in Spain, a 6-day race, which Rob Hatch and Matt Stevens are bringing you right now. And then there's the Tour du Limousin in France, Hannah Walker and Pippa York bringing you that one too. I'm actually off in a couple of days to Germany to bring viewers here at the Home Cycling on Eurosport GCN coverage of the Deutschland Tour, which is yet another one of these short ASO races organised by the Tour de France organisers, as this race is as well. It's part of the reason the race is so well organised and well publicised too. The handy thing for me as a commentator is that the guidebooks, the road books, and all the information is almost identical in terms of the way it's laid out, so it doesn't half help get your head around a race. Don't forget, by the way, when we talk about these road books and that kind of thing, you at home, if you're a regular fan to all of our coverage here on Eurosport GCN, you can download them and use them yourselves. The mapping is usually really good, as is all the information which is contained within it. Don't read it too deeply, though, because you might well hear Ian and I relaying to you stuff which you've already read, but it is all in there for you, not just us. So with 67 kilometres to go, we're actually getting that little bit closer to our next sprint point. We meet the sea, turn right across a crosswind to get to that sprint point too, and that could be interesting because we meet the edge of a kind of a rocky outcrop of a headland on our consistent way north, but turn back across the wind to get to that sprint point. It'll be interesting to see whether the riders spot that. Ian and I are very lucky in that, in fact, all of our commentators here at Eurosport GCN are given access to the same files that the pro teams can see on VeloViewer. And one of the great things about VeloViewer, and I'm not paid to say this, by the way, I'm just saying it because actually it does work very well, which is why the vast majority of the teams use it, indicates in different colours the severity of crosswinds. And on my VeloViewer page I'm looking at on my laptop in front of you right now, the right-hand turn, the easterly turn to take you to the next sprint point, which comes in, 10k's time, is going to turn them into a hefty crosswind, 23 kph from their left, coming in off the sea. So it'll be interesting to see whether that does anything to the peloton when it comes through there. Shouldn't be a problem at all for these guys. I guess the question is who's going to bother going for those bonus seconds. I'm wondering whether Vincent van Hemelen might fancy picking up another 3 seconds, because if he carries on like this into tomorrow, not only will he win the King of the Mountains jersey, but he'll be quite high on general classification too. I don't know whether you've worked it out yet, Ian, if he's managed to stay in the breakaway and stay out there today, maybe over the Kirkidalen summit. He might have done enough to sew up that peacock jersey for the win of it ahead of tomorrow. We might, certainly if he stays deep into this stage, he's going to stand a very good chance of taking it all the way to the finish, won't he?
He will. I think the only person perhaps tomorrow, if they get in the breakaway and wrap up all the points, is Ravnoy, who perhaps could challenge him. But I think this peloton might explode in a minute when they take that turn across the little bridge that's coming up. We've just seen this breakaway contend with some really, really strong crosswinds. You see them kind of fighting the bike and really echeloning out, even though there's only 6 riders. So get ready for that big turn right across the little bridge, and I think Uno X might be gathering themselves to try and hit it into this next section of road.
So we watch our 6 riders just starting to turn now and go in the direction of the next sprint point in Lillefjord. And you can hear the wind ripping in. We mentioned this yesterday. Once they get to these sort of fjord edge and coastal edge roads, thankfully the crash barrier there, which is pretty high, does actually give them a fair bit of protection from the wind. If I was them, I would be riding right up against it to get maximal protection. You can see the Norwegian flag blowing back in our direction now, off the water that does stand there, in the direction of this peloton, who are really pressing on by the looks of it. Looking at the colours at the front now, Ian, is that Uno X coming back to the front?
It is. I think they have made that right turn now. They'll be heading over that little bridge where it was really blowing a gale, as we saw literally the size of that flag. It takes a huge amount of wind to really force a flag of that size out at the angle that it was. So we see our breakaway contending with that crosswind. One of those riders not particularly enjoying the crosswinds is Paul Double, the lighter climber-framed rider, just struggling ever so slightly and beginning to skip some turns. But we need to see this peloton now as it is lined out. Is that Uno X at the front of this one, putting it in the gutter, everyone lined out, and this is going to split to pieces on this next section of road if someone really turns it up.
Yeah, this is not, by the way, just to point out, as we see a bit of land art, actually. That's nice. Nice work there. Beautifully proportioned. Ooh, Danny Navarro's not having a great day by the looks. I'm just looking to see if he's got another mechanical problem. We've already seen him off the back once. I'm not sure he's made it back in yet, Ian. He's always been a fairly ragged-looking rider on the bike as well, all over the machine, and not unlike a kind of Fernando Escartin style, rocking and rolling all over the bike. Do you know who I'm talking about? I might be showing my age here.
No,
Chelme
I do.
rider
I do.
from the 1990s. Yeah. Anyway, looks to me like he could well just be taking back layers for his teammates. We've seen him off the back twice, so he's probably just doing a great job.
I don't think this is the time to be taking back layers. This is going to split to pieces.
Yes, it is already. Look at this. We're looking for numbers. My goodness me, there's a lot of... there's a fair few Burgos Biache riders there, and I think quite a few human-powered health too. They've got Paul Double up the road, but that was at least 3 of the human-powered health riders there. So I don't know whether they've dropped back for someone or what, but My suspicion, looking at the side-angled shot of that peloton, is that is not the case. And it's those naughty boys in custard and lipstick, or whatever it was, again, of Uno X who've started this again, haven't they?
Yeah, just that local knowledge and getting information about that turn, and look at that, just the race in absolute pieces as we saw yesterday, but this time round only 65 kilometres remaining. Yesterday it was more up around 85 kilometres remaining, and things managed to all come back together. But a good indication of how fast that peloton is going is they've taken a minute and a half out of our breakaway in around about 5 kilometres, as we see now more and more groups of riders being distanced, the cars being allowed to go past, and that front group down to probably 40, 50 riders already.
Watch those cars, Ian. Watch those cars. One or two riders trying to follow the neutral service car through. They would probably get in trouble for doing that, but it must be so tempting when you're in that third group, so close to the group in front. You've got cars coming past you to get up to the next group. How tempting must it be to accidentally find yourself sucked into the slipstream of the passing car? Even just for a few seconds, it would be rather handy, wouldn't it?
It would. And you see right now, though, Uno X not 100% committed with keeping this one going. Seems a little bit of confusion within the team whether they want to keep driving this one or to sit back and relax, because I'm sure they're still kind of a little bit burnt from yesterday's huge effort and not really getting a huge amount for it. So looks like they are persisting ever so slightly, but perhaps not as many as I thought had been dropped. But you see the panic behind.
Yep, and that's two DSM riders there. And here's that next group, very close behind them as well. Definitely is one of the Uno X riders caught in that group too, so they're not all at the front today, as they have been on a number of occasions this week. Looking at numbers, seeing who is in here. Sebastian Schoenberger is in there, I think, if I'm not mistaken, for Human Powered Health, one of those Human Powered Health riders. Alessandro Vere, the Italian rider for Arkea Samsic, right at the back here with the red gilet. Notably, I suppose, with possibly slightly less kit with them than they might have for some races, Ian, in the cold today, this 9 degrees that we're seeing and the blustery cold wind, quite a lot of them wearing rain jackets even though it's not raining. Well, it may have been a couple of spots of rain, but it's certainly not been raining heavily at all, just to keep the cold out, I guess.
Just to keep that wind off, I'd imagine, just trying to protect themselves a little bit more, try and keep a little bit warmer. I think it's one of those races when you're sat at home packing for it, I'd be putting every item of clothing I own in the suitcase, because they have withstood some brutal conditions in the first 3 stages of this race so far.
Yeah, 62k to go. So we have about 4k to go to that bonification point, where there'll be 3, 2 and 1 seconds, 3, 2 and 1 points in that blue jersey points classification. And Vincent van Hemelen, his third day, well, do we call it third day in the break? He had his own little solo escape on stage 1, didn't he? And he was a very clever rider who wasn't in the breakaway, but just as they got caught, went, yeah, I'm just going to clip off and take these maximum points here for the King of the Mountains, to finish level on points with Lewis Bauer, but leading the Peacock Jersey competition because he won the all-category climb. Where are those all-category points going to go today? Right on top of Havøysund on the island up in the north that we're riding northward towards now. They've got one more King of the Mountains summit at Selvika with 15k to go, and that in itself could be a nice little launch pad before we even cross the bridge over to Havøysund, maybe, Ian. Maybe those little steps, I say little, they are nearly 4 kilometres in length for the first one at Kirkedalen, and then that summit with 15k to go, the Selvika, that's 1,600 metres. They could be enough, actually, to create a group that goes to that finish together, maybe 5k to the sprint.
Yeah, I have to say the race organisers, the race directors have done a brilliant job in placing the climbs, placing the sprint points at points in the race that leads to the race being animated. So riders going for those bonus seconds in those sprints and almost carrying on to the next point in the race because there's a climb after it or because it's close to the finish. And today's no different. The potential launch pad, like you say, with 13.9 kilometres to go, is that Selvika summit. That is a 2.6 kilometre climb at an average of 5.4% gradient. So pretty hard, similar to the finishing climb that we saw yesterday that split the bunch. So be interesting to see if anyone attacks there.
Well, we're watching our peloton, who have now rejoined after a split in the crosswind, or at least the main peloton and the group that was behind has rejoined. The fact that a few of them are sitting up might mean a few opportunities in amongst the following cars for the next little group to get on. We could just do with zooming out a little bit here as we watch them along this headland. That is the Norwegian Sea off to their left. It's not a fjord or a pretty little salmon river. It's the brutal, freezing cold Norwegian Sea, off which a sort of 25 kph wind is buffeting from their left-hand side. There's the main peloton. Just want to look down a little bit because I think there's another group just off the back of those cars back there. They're following that road all the way around the edge here until they turn inland to the sprint in Lillefjord in 5 kilometres time. Still hanging on to 4 minutes though. All that flurry of crosswind pushing yesterday by Uno X immediately did for our breakaway, didn't it? It was so hard that the breakaway just went from having 3 minutes down to 2 minutes, 1 minute, and then 30 seconds, and they were gone. Whereas today, they've clung on really well. I think the most they've had is about 5.5 minutes. They've still got 4 minutes now. Maybe they will survive with that peacock jersey in there on the shoulders of Van Hemelen until minimum of Kirkedalen. But let's see.
I was looking into Van Hemelen this morning because he has looked a very classy bike rider. The way he attacked that stage one very cleverly and looked very strong yesterday, picking up those points. And he was part of the Lotto Destiny under-23 team, and any rider that comes through that squad, put a little asterisk down to them on your start list, because that has produced so much talent over the years. And he was actually third at the Junior Tour of Flanders in 2018. So got some good pedigree, obviously from good stock, so perhaps why he looks so classy on the bike. So yeah, looking to him to maybe step up next year at the classic season. This only going to give him confidence, having such a strong ride at, perhaps not one of the biggest races on the calendar, but certainly not to be sniffed at the way he's ridden this week.
No, absolutely. He's a tall rider too. He's a fairly muscular rider as well. Seems to be quite a big guy, but climbs very powerfully as well. Certainly when he took that all category climb, he was really laying on quite a big gear as well. A powerful sort of rolling climber as well, who obviously set out with, by the looks of it, Ian, a really clear intention. Although we were maybe a bit surprised to see a Team Flanders rider attacking by himself at that point. Seems to have been quite deliberate. And once again, we see that thing where I'm sure if we went to quite a few of the teams, particularly the continental teams in here today, and any of the teams who haven't made it, like Trinity maybe, they would probably say to us, it was a right battle to get into the breakaway. It was really tough. And yet once again we see this situation where somebody who's obviously in very good form, totally intent on getting that jersey, presumably has said to himself this morning and his team, I will be in that breakaway today. And sure enough he is.
Exactly.
And it's a kind of contagious thing, isn't it? You're in there one day, the next day you get up and you see the break starting to go, but you just sort of, he will have had that sense that I'm going to be in that breakaway today. It will happen, and it did.
Yeah, it did, and I think that's one of the great things that has come about in the last recent few years is getting live coverage of the full tour stages and the Giro stages, etc., and you get to watch that formation of the breakaway. Even some of the classics, we get to see the formation of the breakaway, even showing the entirety of Milan-San Remo. But seeing how that break forms, you can get an understanding of maybe what sort of rider has made it into the breakaway. Say at the Tour, if the break goes on the first climb of the day, well, you know that's full of strong riders. That wasn't a weak move. That was done on some slopes of a climb, and therefore all the strong riders in that breakaway. Whereas today, we don't know how that breakaway formed, whether it was on that bridge in a crosswind, in a fortly contested kind of huge attacks here, there and everywhere, or perhaps Like some days, it's the first one to go. The first rider kicks off, a few guys go with him, and then the peloton shuts down behind, and it's gone. And it can be a relatively easy process, or it can be the hardest half an hour of your life. It can, in fact, sometimes be the hardest part of the race for a lot of riders, just getting into that breakaway. So, that can shape how the riders feel towards the end of these stages. We come on with 3 hours remaining, around 100 kilometres left, and sometimes it's easy to forget kind of what energy expenditure some of these riders have put in just to get to the live part of the stage on TV.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always nice when we can bring viewers the whole of it. I guess that's the nature of elite sport as well, isn't it, Ian, to a certain extent, that many things look to the average viewer at home far easier than they actually are. I guess that's what elite sport is, isn't it? It's the making incredibly difficult things look natural and not easy, but smooth, predictable. 1K to go to this Lillefjord intermediate sprint point, this bonification point. Let's see what happens. This will be a nice punctuation point here. I think King of the Mountains might go for this. Vincent van Hemelen, the man we've just been talking about. It was Anton Stensby, the next best on general classification, who won the first one. And I didn't actually note it down, but I think Van Hemelen was second to him there. So 500 metres to go to the sprint. We have now turned to the east, turning away from the sea, actually, as we watch Michael Rice removing his toe cap. So he won't be going for this, unless he's doing a sneaky, I'm just going to go back and remove my overshoe and then come past you all job, but I don't think it's that.
It's one of the strangest moments to try and take off your knee warmers I've ever seen. Surely he knows there's going to be a small acceleration within the breakaway. So
you watch, he's going to come flying past them, Ian. He'll come flying past them now. It's all a game. No, Stensby's going to take this by himself. Paul Double just sitting on behind him. Same again. Anton Stensby is the only one who wants to take these bonification seconds and the blue jersey points as well. Ian Field, why? Why has he deliberately gone for both of them? Come on.
A little bit of prize money.
Oh, that's to help.
There we go.
And check out my YouTube channel. He is listening to us. I knew it. Why is he doing it? Check out my YouTube channel. All right. You better tell us there then. So there you go. Look up Anton Stensby's YouTube channel. We should do it now, Ian, while we're live on air. He's just told us to do it. We should start playing out the video. See what he does. Check out my YouTube. Did you ever think you would hear that? You know, from a young rider. He knows how to promote himself, doesn't he? My goodness me. The 22-year-old. I've never had that before. In a breakaway, check out my YouTube channel. It would never have happened in your day, Ian, would it? You'd have said, check out my monthly newsletter, which is sent out by mail. No, he's not that old.
What was it back in the day? MySpace. Check out MySpace.
Yeah. Wow. I just don't think I've ever had that before. Check out my YouTube channel. That is genius. Absolutely brilliant.
More and more riders taking to YouTube, and the latest being Remco Evenepoel setting up his own YouTube channel, giving us a little insight into kind of the life and mind and what goes into making a champion. His first video on YouTube was all about aerodynamics testing, and very interesting. It's great to kind of get that insight with social media that we never had as I was growing up. But Stensby there, I mean, he's a quality rider, only 21 seconds down on the overall within this race in the breakaway today, second on the second stage, I think, of Qinghai Lake. So a quality rider and doing some great self-promotion on today's stage.
It does raise an interesting point, though, doesn't it, Ian? What we've just heard, Anton Stensby there. Check out my YouTube channel. I know we sort of chortle about it, but professional sport and being a professional athlete who is marketable and who can make money out of it isn't just about the result sheet. As we know, in every one of these races, there's a field of 106 riders here today. Even if everyone is as good as each other, there'll still only be one winner. Someone will be second, someone will be 106th. And in a sport as tough as ours, as you said, where you can track a professional rider's career all the way through to, the age of 35, 36, they could have done all that and been a pretty good professional and yet won nothing. Not a single race. It happens, doesn't it? It's brutally cruel. When you consider that a lot of them are riding, 70, maybe some of them even 80 race days a year, and do that for 10, 12, maybe 15 years and still win nothing. But there's more than one way to make money and market yourself, particularly nowadays as well, isn't there?
There certainly is, and I think it's a big thing for teams as well. If you have two CVs being sent in from two riders and on paper the results look almost identical, yet one has a successful YouTube channel with a load of subscribers and a big following on social media, I know which one I'm signing up for the following season. As harsh or as good as you want to think about that, as we see one of the Groupama riders making quite a big effort just to get round to the front. Perhaps, some little colour blocking going on. Uno X down the right-hand side of our peloton, Israel right in the middle. Groupama Continental team just there as well, all gathering themselves. I'm sure they're going to be very aware of any points on this course which are going to be exposed to those crosswinds that we've seen. We see how hard that wind's blowing, those flags. The Norwegians have done a great job of putting out lots of flags for us to give an exact wind direction and wind strength almost next to the course all the way along, because there are small changes in direction all the way along this route, and it's absolutely key within these stages. When that wind just comes from the right angle at the right strength, this race has been blown to pieces, and all the teams looking a bit more attentive now. There's 53.5 kilometres of racing remaining. Everything's going to come thick and fast from this point in. We've got another summit, 32.5 kilometres below the Kirkedalen summit, which is a 4.1 kilometre climb, an average gradient of 5.2%. So quite a hard climb. That's a first category, horse category climb, so plenty of points on offer at the top of that one as well.
As we look down on this bridge here, it's there in Lillefjord to mark a special rest area. This is according to our guidebook, and I'll read directly from it, which has been arranged by the Norwegian Road Administration in conjunction with the National Tourist Route in Havøysund to be a starting point for hiking trails. The waterfall you see falling down here to where the riders are is the river Fosselva, or the very end of the Fosselva, where it spills into the sea itself. Because turning away from the waterfall, where it cracks out into the inlet of the sea there, the riders turn due northwest and straight into a headwind, where they are right now as well. They ride through a little collection of fishing houses, effectively, called Lillefjord Botn, which I presume might well be Lillefjord Bottom, because it is right at the bottom of this little valley and this beautiful waterfall we see cascading down towards the sea. I cannot believe salmon make their way up there. Tell me they don't, but this is, of course, big migratory salmon route as well, in from that Norwegian Sea and up into the rivers to spawn, if I'm not mistaken. I think there might be easier ways of getting up there, though, than making their way up there. Right, let's have a look back at who is in the breakaway again, because we've been with them for a while. People will have joined us live in our coverage and may not be aware who's there. This is the Luxembourger Michael Reis, lowest placed on general classification in these 6 riders. This is the young Norwegian Ulrik Tvedt in the Norwegian national team. And of course, just like that, we cut away from those two. When we go back to them, I'll fill you in on who the other 4 riders here. Ulrik Tvedt is 20 years of age. Michael Reis, a little bit more experienced, the Luxembourger, riding for the French Arkea Samsic team at the age of 25. There is one of those little fishing huts, peloton. I think we still might be seeing their numbers being just fed a little bit from behind, Ian, after what was it, 3 groups we were split into at one point due to those crosswinds, and things have calmed down a bit, as we can see. 1 or 2 riders taking a little nature break as well at the side of the road.
Yeah, we mentioned it yesterday, we thought as we crossed the line, have a little think about some of the riders that were blown away literally in those crosswinds earlier in the stage, and I was right, there was a big group that came in 17 minutes 29 seconds down yesterday. That was a brutally tough day out for those guys. So but right now, big lull in the action before it really kicks off towards those final climbs. Everyone taking the opportunity to discard with jackets, have a little stop, a little nature stop, go back, get some more food from the team car, drop those jackets off at the same time before the real racing really kicks off at the back end of this stage. But we did just see from our helicopter shot, I did mention earlier in commentary that the weather at the finish looked absolutely horrendous. Some very high winds and some rain, and it did look like just around this headland there was some low cloud and perhaps some rain in store for those riders. You might want to be putting those jackets back on when they get around here and look up.
Yeah, you're right, there's a few taking them off, aren't there? Ian Field is our appointed weather reporter for the north of Norway, and he has found some nasty weather already today on his feed. This is our Kipo Kelm farmer. Roger Adria is their team leader. He on the left-hand side there. Talking about sides, you're right, Ian. They are lining up here, aren't they? Kelm farmer of Roger Adria in the middle there. Q36.5 led by Cyrus Monk on the right there with that black rain jacket, long blonde mullet flowing out, I should say. Hanging out, how disrespectful. Flowing out beautifully behind. He is up on the left-hand side of that peloton as we look down at them right now. So yeah, presumably, as Ian has said, sensing potential danger after yesterday. That would be a bit of a wake-up call for some of these riders, not least the fact that it's been split already today. But Ian, in amongst all that, look at this, 3:55 out for our Peacock Jersey group, our 6 leaders out front. They're clinging on nicely to those 4 minutes. They are going to survive to Kirkendalen, I think, unless something crazy happens. As we go back to the break again, I'll just finish off rolling through who was in there. I mentioned Michael Rice, who's on the front there for RKS Samsic. This is Paul Double, the British rider riding for Human Powered Health, the American team. Ulrich Tved, as I said, their Norwegian national team in the red top. And this is Anton Stensby, who's won both the sprint points today. He is the slightly shorter. There he was doing it, by the way, riding for Team Coop. Anton Stensby, Paul Double just following him through to that sprint point again. Not too difficult to note those ones down. And then there's our Peacock Jersey, King of the Mountains. I was having a heated debate with my wife, Ian, this morning, my wife, Leda, who at least has a bit of an iron in the fire as a former professional rider. She insisted that the Peacock Jersey was all wrong and looked terrible, in actual fact. I'm quoting her directly, I think, because she's not within earshot, thankfully. But it's certainly one that some love and others loathe. I'm pleased to say, though, that actually in this shot here, the blue and the yellow does sort of go with the Team Flanders Balois shorts, doesn't it? At least it's not a horrific clash. Can you imagine? I can imagine there might be some kit that it really would go badly with, but it seems to work on Vincent van Hemelen. He's certainly not going to let go of it easily.
I was surprised when you said that it was the best jersey in cycling the other day.
I love it.
I will admit it does go quite well with his team shorts, but yeah, I'm not sure I'll be purchasing one of those to wear myself.
No, it's just if you said to me, can you think of something unusual to go on a cycling jersey? Literally the last thing I'd think of would be a peacock's feather. And then for that reason I like it. It's just totally out there. Fascinating mix of different colours of reindeer here as well. And I guess I was going to use a bird term, but plumage, what do you call that? The colour of them to blend in at different times of the year, depending on how much snow and ice there is as well, I guess. Some of them, I suspect, changing their colour during the course of the year, like birds maybe. We're in the far north of Norway. We continue to go even more northerly. This is the most northerly bike race in the world, the 10th edition of this very, very young race, but a race which has already a really strong following, not just of bike racing fans, but also fans of the great outdoors, fans of expansive landscapes, beautiful rocky outcrops, and, everything we're seeing in front of us right now, it is the most northerly bike race in the world, and we're racing across the course of this week to the most northerly point in mainland Europe, Nordkap, or the North Cape, where our race finishes tomorrow. And it really does finish right there next to the monument on North Cape, which actually is the same as our winner's trophy as well, the kind of globe on a spinning globe golden stand as well. They're definitely getting some sunlight right now, Ian, but that might indicate they're just rolling through a bit of changing weather. Hopefully not. Hopefully it's going to stay dry. They're still going into this headwind at the moment, this lot, though, aren't they? So maybe waiting for that turn.
Yeah, no one really wanting to press on into this block headwind, and that's why that gap to our breakaway has stabilised around about the 4-minute mark, just because, yeah, nobody wants to press on. No one wants to give everyone shelter behind them into this block headwind. So just covering the road, blocking the road, each team putting one rider almost on the front. But we see any change of direction with this strength of wind, any crosswind scenario coming up in this final 50 kilometres of racing, and I'm sure the way Uno X rode yesterday, they're going to be keen to split things again, split things down. If you can get rid of one of your rivals before those final climbs, then you're in a much better position.
I have to say, I'm singing the praises, as I so often do, of not just VeloViewer, but any online system which gives you a really clear indication of current wind direction and wind strength and its impact. As I mentioned, VeloViewer, I don't think they're the only people to do this, but VeloViewer do it very clearly. That the line on the map that you're watching, if it goes dark red, it means this is really serious. As we have a rainbow right over the riders there as well, so there's definitely rain falling in the air, I think just behind them. But yes, I can see the section they're coming into now. It's been white for the last, 10k after that sprint. They've just turned onto a long section that leads to the next classified climb, which is all very dark red. You can't help but thinking that maybe if we didn't have such sophisticated wind measurements and mapping software as well, it might still be left open to a little bit more uncertainty and some of the teams being in the know because they've got someone up the road who's literally stood there at the side of the road waiting to give a feed and is going, "Cool, crikey, it's a bit windy from a right-hand side," and they radio back to the car. Now, I think those days, Ian, by the looks of it, have gone, and so we see teams moving en masse to all try and split it, or at least moving up because they know someone else is going to.
Precisely,
I don't know if that makes the racing better or makes it worse.
I think it means no excuses.
It's true.
If a team make out that they didn't know that crosswinds are coming, then they've only got themselves to blame. They can't say, "Oh, we've never done this race before," "Oh, we're not from around here," etc. The forecast we looked at wasn't correct or anything like that, because they all have access to kind of the same software that we all can see on the internet through various websites, and so they shouldn't be caught out. They shouldn't be on the back foot in these scenarios, but still have to have the legs. You still have to be able to get yourself and your entire team in position for these crosswind situations. So it does still come down to the riders, down to the knack, down to knowing when to put yourself in the right position, because go too early and waste energy into this headwind section, and then you might be on the back foot for the actual vital crosswind section. So still a lot of bike riding to be done to put yourself in the correct position, no matter how much information you've had before the stage or even information you're being given during the stage.
I said I would get back to our guidebook. While the breakaway's still got 4 minutes, I'll read through it because it is really interesting about this part of the coastline. So do bear with me. If this is not your thing, maybe just take in the sights, but I'm going to read it out anyway. Well, the trip continues to Snefjord. Here you'll find plenty of fishing opportunities in both the lakes alongside us and the sea, off to the rider's left, of course. And in the summer, the Sami people have their reindeer herds in the area, as we've just seen. It's a beautiful hiking area. It invites long walks along the Snefjord watercourse, and in Krokel Valley, along Route 889, which the riders are on now, of course, we continue over and down into the Backfjord Valley towards Backfjord itself. In winter, this piece of road shows how inhospitable nature can be with its enormous snowfalls, though in summer it's a scenic sight that can take most people's breath away. Onwards towards Havoya, there's a lot of remains of settlements that are over 6,000 years old. And in Selvika, where we're headed towards the summit up there, there is a nature trail in addition to the Selvika being a favourite destination among the locals as well. So we'll look out for those trails as we climb up in the direction of the Kirkidalen summit and then the Selvika summit beyond it as well, as we get further and further up towards that island that we're riding out onto. Once we get over the Havøsund bridge onto the island at the very end of this stage, really it's climbing all the way, as Ian has said, and it's 3.5 kilometres on the island to get up to the very top, and you are climbing basically up onto the top of the hill in the middle of the island too. That's where our finale will be, and that is why we're calling this the Queen stage, deciding stage where we suspect big gaps or bigger gaps will open up in the general classification. So far those gaps have all come from the bonus seconds, as Ian Field was mentioning earlier. They have shaped our general classification because we've had 2 sprint finishes so far on these first 2 days. It is highly unlikely we'll get a big group sprint finish today, although I could certainly see it being some kind of reduced sprint maybe, Ian, but then I guess there's still so much to play for over the last two climbs. Maybe these guys will survive. I must not talk about them as if they're doomed either, because maybe they might survive.
If we go by the classic 1 minute per 10 kilometres, then they're on course to just about hold on. But obviously that calculation's more to do with flat stages, so they're going to lose more time on these final climbs. But like you say, the GC has been completely shaped by the bonus seconds. The top 13 overall have all benefited from picking up bonus seconds along the way. And then 14th to 44th overall are riders that have lost no time apart from losing time to those bonus seconds. So all to play for down to 44th, I think.
Yeah, if you have just recently joined us during our live coverage of the stage here, my name's Jez Cox and I have Ian Field with me. This is day 3 of the 10th edition of the Arctic Race of Norway. The race being led by the young British rider Noah Hobbs of the Equipe Continental Groupama FDG, the 19-year-old. Very consistent sprinting, second on stage 1 to Alberto Danese, and then winning some bonus seconds late on yesterday as well to ensure that he took over the race lead. And he, going into today's race, leads the race by 1 second from Alberto Danese, ahead of Michele Gazzoli, yesterday's stage winner. And Lewis Bauer, who moves down 1 place yesterday, having been in the breakaway on stage 1. So that was our green zone the riders have just ridden past. Talking of green zones, Ian, by the way, I don't know if you've noticed this so far on the stage. The 2 places that, in the green zone, that is the place the riders are told to discard of bottles and things they don't want to carry with them. And there's immediately a team who then stop after the riders have passed through and clear up that area, pack up the green zone and roll on. The other place that they are allowed, although not encouraged, to dispose of bottles, of course, is where there are little pockets of fans at the roadside. Now, I didn't mention this yesterday, but I saw it on a couple of occasions, and I thought, in some of the open expanses where we are now, every now and again you'll go past a father and 2 kids at the side of the road, or a little family, or one person by themselves. One of the things I noticed yesterday is that when they're particularly spread out like this, you get to that person and it's literally like they're being peppered with bottles. Now, some of those bottles are empty, some are half full. They're all relatively firm, but literally the riders, you know that the riders are doing their best not to hit anyone. Most of them, if they can, will slide it low so it rolls across the road, but riders deeper in that bunch, they don't want the bottle to come back on the road, do they? They don't want to hit anyone, so they're basically lugging it. And there were definitely a few occasions where I could actually see fans at the roadside sort of taking shelter and protecting their head as a rain of bottles came down on them. It's not easy, though, is it? Particularly in a race like this.
It isn't. I did actually notice that yesterday. There was a small pocket of fans, and they got bombarded with about 25 bottles, enough bottles to supply the family that was stood there and any relations that live in the local area. So, as long as, to be honest, as long as those bottles are picked up, I don't really mind. But yeah, there is a bit of a safety issue. Spectators having to wear protective clothing and helmets, perhaps, coming out to watch our bike race. But right now, our breakaway hits one of those exposed sections. As you can see, where they line across the road, this is a crosswind section, and the way they're travelling at 50 kilometres an hour, that means it's probably a little bit of a tailwind cross. So let's get ready for our bunch to hit this same section in 4 minutes time. We're also rapidly approaching the Kirkdalen summit.
Yes, we're getting closer and closer all the time to that summit. They will start climbing fairly soon as well, because it's 3.8 kilometres in length. Welcome back, those of you who've been away on a breakaway. We have, on a break. Well, we've got a breakaway of sorts in front of us, of course, because they're actually extending their lead, these 6 riders out front. Now going in excess of 4 minutes. We'll see what it is when we come back to them in just a moment, but they've turned into a bit of a crosswind, the same crosswind that this lot, our peloton, have been worrying about for the last 10, 15k or so, as they mass themselves at the front, ready to try and, well, either wait to see if anyone else has a go or take it on themselves maybe. But 4 minutes and 10 seconds our 6 riders have out front, and they are a couple of k away from starting the ascent of Kirkedalen Summit, which is our first of 3 climbs which mark quite evenly the last 34 kilometres of today's penultimate stage, and it keeps climbing all the way towards that ore category climb of Havøysund on the island where our race finishes. One thing I have noticed about these coastal fishing houses, Ian, is you wouldn't have to worry too much about the neighbours making noise, because although they're fairly well grouped together, I don't think I've seen any 2 houses next to each other. There's always a good sort of, at minimum, 30, 40 metres between them when they're grouped together like that.
Yeah,
not much wind protection either. Beautiful. That's just stunning, isn't it? Not quite sure what it'd be like in winter, though, when for most of the day, you open your curtains in the morning, it's dark. You get on with your fishing and mending your nets. Sorry, I'm kind of possibly simplifying the lifestyle, particularly of the indigenous Sami fishing people. And then you get a little bit of daylight midday, small amount, an hour, a couple of hours, something like that, I think it is. And then in the middle of winter, and then it's dark again all afternoon.
Here we go.
Fascinating. Yep. Cofidis who starts it as well, Ian.
It was the mixture of Cofidis and Uno X yesterday, and it looks like we've got the same combination, and these riders at the back are in for a shock when they look up and see it lined out at the front. We see some riders desperately trying to move up at the last minute because they see the panic ahead, and it's Uno X who've stuck this one in the gutter. This is going to be a big move from that Norwegian team.
Right, Ian, can you talk to us about the mechanics of how that works, right? So tell us what they do. Tell us where they go now on the road and where the wind's coming from.
So the wind is coming from the rider's left-hand side, the rider's left-hand shoulder. That's where the wind's coming from. So that means this rider moving out to the middle of the road and only allowing protection to the rider that's kind of just behind to their right. They're only giving half road. So anybody kind of 15, 20 riders back, they're just in the gutter as such. They're all in the right-hand side of the road. And once that thins down to one long line down and a gap forming, but it takes a big confident rider to form that second echelon, but that's kind of what you need to do if you're not in that first echelon, because otherwise you're just taking the wind for the entire time. And at least if you start a second echelon, you can get a working group that just kind of sits behind that first echelon. So you see there the yellow jersey of Noah Hobbs, well positioned, but he's kind of one of the first riders in that line, in that gutter as such, who's beginning to take a little bit of wind. As see now 2 lines of riders, that forms the echelon. As we look at it, the line on the right-hand side, they're moving forward and to the left, and there's a big split already.
Oh, dearie me. Yeah, Noah Hobbs in exactly perfect position there. What a shot as well, looking across this raised road in between these 2 bodies of water, and one long string behind. This is the back end where you do not want to be. Well, wheels being let go willfully at the moment by the looks of it. This is Guy Sagiv, the Israeli rider for Israel Premier Tech, who's the wheel's gone and don't think he's got much in there to close it. When you see riders out of the saddle looking like they're sprinting uphill into the wind just to try and get back on, it is absolutely desperate right now. And
looks
this
like
is
Uno X, Israel, DSM, Jaco Alula, all well represented in that first echelon. And we see now, finally, once the gap has gone, that second group finally realised that rather than every single rider who's been dropped taking the wind, somebody has moved to the left-hand side of the road and they formed a second echelon. Once that's formed, you stand a chance of holding the gap, maintaining the gap to that front echelon if you work well together. But all the time you just remain in the gutter, everyone is taking the wind. Everyone's working as hard as the rider in front almost, and so you're just going to lose time to that front well-worked echelon. So they stand a chance now, but it might it might mean a third echelon needs to be formed behind those front two.
As we go back to our breakaway, Ian, can I chuck something your way in terms of like a potential tactic? And this, the assumption, of course, as we watch that, and I'm commentating on it with the assumption that every single person in there wants to hold onto the wheel, wants to stay there, doesn't want the gap to go. What about, as it was Uno X who started this with Cofidis, what about, there's 6 rider teams, right? So what about if Uno X put 5 of their riders at the front to smash it to pieces? They drop one further back to about 25th, 30th place, whose sole job is to actually let the wheel go and then either jump across or stay in that second group. I know that's a terribly filthy tactic, but what about that? What, is that too clever to work? You know, deliberately gapping.
But that's really negative racing, and
that's terrible, isn't it?
I wouldn't like to see that. It's it's like when riders disrupt the chase by going through and then just sitting up, and it's partly down to riders allowing them into that position, as we see one of the Balois Flanders riders being able to ride across that gap. Wow. That is a huge effort. I would love to see who that was, because that's a crazy strong effort.
Absolutely. I want to know exactly who that is. It's such a small gap between the two groups. There's no chance of us getting a camera in there, but unmistakable black rain jacket, blue and yellow shorts of Team Flanders Balois. Wow. That was a very powerful ride. No one could go with him, and he's ripped straight across the group. There he is, sitting second wheel of that left-hand group, that leading group, just recovering by the looks of it. But that was impressive, because any one of those riders behind it, if they had the strength to and were on his wheel, they'd have tried to go with him. We can see a couple of his teammates back there too. I'd love to know who that was. It's obviously not Vincent van Hemelen, who's up in the breakaway, but that Team Flanders Balois does sort of pride itself on having some classic Belgian riders, doesn't it? Riders who'll be well used to riding in open sections like this and crossroads. Big, powerful riders as well. And it is, even after his big effort, by the looks of it, being sewn back up. But in doing so, there's a gap in the second group too. And a third group off the back too, isn't there? It has smashed.
The speed's so high, as we see our breakaway now just heading into the lower slopes of that climb, that Kirkdalen summit.
As we keep snaking our way around the little rocky outcrops and rising up to go around them as well, I swear a couple of these shots you look at, I think we've just done that bit, haven't we? It looks exactly the same. Understandably, rolling through such expansive landscape, looking down at that, look at that. That is the front of our peloton. Is that, hang on, that is the front of our peloton there, isn't it? Or is this the next group we're looking at now off the back of it? Ian, I didn't think our main peloton was that small. If it is, it's just smashed again. I think it has.
That front group has split again, just riders being peeled off the back. As we hit the lower slopes, this is 4.1 kilometres in length, 5.2% gradient. This is a first category, horse category climb within the Arctic Race of Norway. So one of the tougher climbs on the route. And already this race is in pieces before we've even kind of done this climb, and I'm sure more and more riders will get dropped as we head up this climb. But Noah Hobbs has made it a good number. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 riders from Jaco Aluda. They're in a brilliant position. Uno X, we know who kicked this off. They're in a brilliant position. There's a number of Israel riders, at least 3 DSM riders I think in there as well. But right now these riders out the back, and I don't think these are getting back on today like we saw yesterday.
Thank you for spotting that, Ian. I hadn't noticed that this one is an all-category climb, the Super KOM, as they call it in this race. So this is 6, 4 and 2 points at the top of Kirkdalen summit, which is even more reason why this is going to be a rather handy day for Vincent van Hemelen in that peacock jersey. Hello. Definite change of conditions now, isn't there, for our leading, well, what do we call that? Second group on the road now. That's the front of the peloton, which is definitely split. I am, and I'm sure you are, Ian, very impressed with Noah Hobbs. He was riding for himself there, despite the fact he's got teammates there, but having the sense to, as you said, sometimes it's easier just to go through. And he's in that front group there as they're disappearing into the weather that you had been describing to us as having seen up at the finish on social media. Yeah,
the weather really closing in on these riders now as they head more and more in a northerly direction. Yeah, within an echelon, it's actually easier to go through, unless there is like a perfect number. So the entire road is the echelon, and you can kind of just sit in the gutter protected in a protected position, but often that isn't the case. And if people start to sit on in an echelon, it's very easy for the riders going through just to ride half road rather than full road. So right now they're riding full road, so everyone gets protection. But if you want riders behind to really kind of not sit on, not being able to take the draft, you make it a half road echelon and it just lines out in the gutter. But Noah Hobbs being really attentive now and sitting in a great position, second wheel up this climb, going to hit some shorter, steeper sections within this climb. We see the third group on the road as Paul Double is actually dropped on the climb. And I think it's just been a wearing down process for him today, riding those crosswinds as a lighter rider. I think he's only around 57, 58 kilograms in those crosswinds. He's going to be expending a lot of energy riding closer to his threshold than perhaps some of the bigger guys in that breakaway. And yeah, that's just been a wearing down process of the young British climber. And actually, we hit the slopes where you think it's going to suit him, but he's already expended too much energy to be able to continue with that breakaway. So the breakaway now down to 5 riders and still 2.5 kilometres of climbing to go.
Yeah, there we go. I was about to say, I thought it was a bit nearer than that. I was just going to say we've got about a K to go, but you're right. There's the graphic, 2.4K, if that's accurate. You can see from the gradient, as we look at it, it's not super steep, but it continues dragging, and it's also, as Ian has mentioned, it's that accumulated fatigue of those crosswinds that have been hitting us. It's the Italian Marco Frigo of Israel Premier Tech who was pushing the pace on the front of this. We once again see Uno X coming back and doing more too, along with Q36.5, who we've seen a little bit more of today. Marco Frigo now dropping back a little bit. One of the Q36.5 riders deciding to see if he can go off the front of this, and being followed by the Norwegian national champion, Fredrik Dvernes. This is interesting. I certainly hadn't seen this happening, but look at the gap now. 2 minutes, Ian. In the space of the run into this climb, our breakaway have actually lost 2 minutes really quickly.
Yeah,
not unlike we saw yesterday.
We saw how fast the peloton were going into the with that kind of cross tailwind, kind of up around 65, 70 kilometres now on basically a flat road. So that's brought the gap completely down, and we see riders now on these slopes. It's been a hard attritional kind of last 15 kilometres or so, and I think they're just seeing this as an opportunity that everyone's hurting, so you might as well go on the attack. As we see now, 2 of the Uno X riders, a Q36.5 rider and Jaco Aluda. So one from the big teams, DSM, having to try and close this one down, but still probably 30, 35 riders within this second group on the road. Don't know if we can call it the peloton anymore, as we see in the background just riders everywhere down the road, trying to make the way up this climb, desperately trying to come back to the front of this race, but just trying to get kind of an eye on riders who have made this front split. I think that's Guillaume Martin on the left-hand side in the full red rain cape.
So back to what is now 5 riders in front. As Paul Double has been dropped off, he is, as far as we know, in between. They're being shown, what was that, they were still being shown 2 minutes 20 or so there, so slightly different to what we're seeing here at the top of our screen. Paul Double definitely no longer with them. Wouldn't mind just swinging around to the left to look back and see if he's within any kind of shout of them. We'll watch to see if he is absorbed back into this group, because the gap is definitely coming down. I would suggest it probably is under 2 minutes, close to what we're seeing on our screen right now. And that is a much reduced chasing group now. One of a number of groups who are spread out before you. We can see the group behind them is not giving up on chasing them down either. And I'm not sure that Alberto Dainese isn't on the front now as well. He is, you know. And there we go. Our stage 1 winner. Arguably the best sprinter in the race, Alberto Dainese. The big, strong, trunk-like legs of him. Doing a turn on the front now, on the climb. This stage, almost certainly not about him, but you never know. I don't think so, though. I think this finish is going to be too hard.
Yeah, I think he sees this climb as the final bit of work that he can do for the team. But I thought perhaps Kevin Van Marker, Matt Dinham, they've got a number of options up there in terms of the GC. As we see now, Q36.5 going on the attack again. They really want to try and break this one up now. See our breakaway coming up. Just 1 kilometre to go to the summit now.
Yeah, I've been waiting this week, Ian, to see if we see Carl Fredrik Hagen, their Norwegian up-and-coming rider. He's been hailed as something of a rising superstar over the last few years, Carl Fredrik Hagen, now riding for Q36.5. This is his national race, of course. But I don't think it's him, actually. I'm just looking in these slightly murky conditions. I think it might be one of their Italians, actually, who's on the move there. Carl Fredrik Hagen is a little bit... well, it doesn't look like him. This is a more powerfully built rider. I think it's one of their 2 Italian riders. They have Fedeli, Alessandro Fedeli, and Walter Calzoni as well. Wouldn't mind seeing some race numbers down there, but others jumping across the gap too. Some tired bodies in there, aren't there? After 2 short stages, but stages that have been so cold, and then all that wet yesterday. I talked, didn't I? And we talked, Ian, about the effect on the body it can have of just getting damp through in these cold conditions. It's about 9 degrees average this stage. I wouldn't be surprised if as we climb higher here it's down to 8 and 7 degrees and wet. It does take a lot out.
It's going to feel a lot colder than that 9 degrees that we saw, and just riders almost exploding. Noah Hobbs now all the way down the back of this group, just hanging on. Dalnese just distanced as well, as those attacks went in, but the gradient, thankfully for Dalnese and thankfully for Noah Hobbs, just relented ever so slightly for a few 100 metres, and it's allowed them just to get back on, but going once again at the front, and it does kick up in the final 600 metres or so to 5-6%. You see now our breakaway just shallowing off in the final 200 metres, as we see looks like Van Hemelen will take the points at the top of this one, almost uncontested. He's going to pick up another 6 points to add to his tally. That's going to take him to 26 points, and I'm going to say almost uncatchable now, with only tomorrow's stage remaining. And 2 more summits to go today.
Yeah, Van Hemelen doing that professional job effectively, not so much saying it, but saying it with his legs of, look, lads, I'll pace you up this climb. I'm taking the points at the top, though. Don't have the dishonour of jumping me. No one did. No reason for it either, because, as Ian has said, he's highly likely now to win that race. Win that classification, I should say. Oof, Noah Hobbs' number hanging off from underneath his Midnight Sun general classification leaders jersey. Let's hope that's not a bad sign, because he's battled so well so far. Although he has seen, by the looks of it, a fair bit of wind at the front. And then a little bit of easing off, a bit of looking round as well at the front of our peloton. We've had some attacking. Who's going to take it up next? Uno X sort of think, by the looks of it, maybe a slight laying down of arms there. As they turn in between these little interlocking hills, and I'm guessing as well there is an easing in amongst, in the wind.
Either that or it's turned into a block headwind, and no one really wants to take it on into the block headwind. As we see now, DSM really taking this one on. Perhaps they got word that Noah Hobbs is down the back of this group and struggling, perhaps. There we see Paul Double taken in by the peloton now. Was in that long breakaway.
Yeah, they've got quite a few changes in direction coming too, but this is now at a point where we should see a bit of an easing. There's also quite a sort of long descent down to right the way down to the sea's edge again. As they go along the sea's edge, they will have quite a brute of a crosswind coming from their left, obviously, as they get down into the little valley. They then got a long headwind section to bring them to the next sprint, because we have a bonification sprint point in Selvica. Let's try and get an average measure, well, an accurate measure. So it's saying 1 minute 35. I don't know, I could see them hanging on to that next sprint point in Selvica, which comes just before they start the climb of the Selvica summit as well. An opportunity again for another brilliant day out here for Vincent Van Hemelen. Actually, not just with King of the Mountains points, but with bonification seconds as well. He's having a rather good week here at the Arctic Race of Norway, because he'll be moving up on general classification today, as long as he can hang on to, and that is a big ask, hang on to this leading group. Talking of which, Noah Hobbs.
see how strong the wind is coming from the rider's left-hand side. His teammate trying to do a good job of coming out of the line to give him some sort of protection, but doesn't look like he's quite got the legs to really do too much more. But you see how strong that wind's blowing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Uno X doing their best here. Martin Urian started to push out left and form something of an echelon. But you can see how much the riders were leaning into it there as well, Ian. Really leaning into the wind. Just try and push themselves out a bit. That was stronger there than I realised. This is going to be a tricky descent as well, because not only is it wet, but with those gusting winds, this is quite high speed to be coming down here. The riders will have to be careful.
Especially when they're all on the right-hand side of the road, desperately trying to take some shelter from the rider ahead. It only takes a gust of wind and a flick of wheels and you can be off the road. And yeah, given the rocky outcrops right next to this road, it could be a dangerous situation coming down off that summit. But hopefully everyone stays on the road and everyone stays upright.
Now, this is the descent now off the Kirkendalen summit. For those of you who've just rejoined us, we saw Vincent van Hemelen, our Belgian leader in the King of the Mountains jersey, in that peacock jersey. There he is, sitting second wheel right now, following the rest of them down this descent. And Ian Live has been pointing out, it's a testy descent this. It's wet. The road surface is really good in this part of Norway anyway, as we know. It's lovely and smooth. But there we go. Thankfully, everyone safely through there, but yeah, this is not an easy one, not least with the gusting wind as well through the middle of the valley. They have got a little bit of protection on either side. It's I think that's Michael Rice now, the Arkea Samsic rider. We said it might be a problem for some. I think it has been as well. Crash for one of the Astana riders here as well.
That's Garfoley.
Oh dear. Yeah, Gianmarco Garfoley, oh dear, gone down hard there by himself as well by the looks of it, just seeing it. Oh.
Just looked like he was desperately trying to move up on the left-hand side of the road using that kind of rocky outcrop that unfortunately what he ended up crashing into. Just tried to move up on the left-hand side to gain a better position for the next crosswind, and yeah, just once you're off the road it's really difficult to get back onto the road. That small lip of tarmac makes it difficult, and yeah, just lost control and almost looked like he was trying to get off the bike before he went into those rocks there. Unfortunate for Garfoley, had been riding well.
Yeah, we feel for him, hope he's all right. Thankfully he's got, by the looks of it, support staff, medical staff there very, very quickly as well, which is good to see. So I appreciate, as the afternoon rolls on, there might be more and more people joining us. We have 5 riders out front, 5 remaining for the 6 who were clear. The British rider Paul Double has now found himself back in this group. Hopefully for him, he is hanging on to this group as well, because he was dropped by the breakaway on the lower slopes of the Kirkendalen summit after a really tough crosswind section just before it. As far as we know, our race leader Noah Hobbs, riding for the Equipo, no, sorry, not Equipo, they're called the Equipe Continental Groupama FDG team, the under-23 Groupama team. The British rider is in the leader's jersey and was in this group, although looking in a little bit of difficulty near the back. Thankfully now they're on the descent. I think, Ian, have you seen him since they've gone over the top? Just looking to see if no, he's in that set. He's just caught off the back, isn't he? I think there's only a small they're getting
gap.
Back on. Yeah, little gap. Don't panic. He is there on this descent as well. But I think maybe some of these riders, having seen Garfoley go off like that, might be a little bit more cautious on this descent as well. 5 riders out front, and they are the Norwegian national team rider Ulrik Tvedt, and 2 other Norwegians as well, both teammates on the Coop team, one of our UCI Continental teams. They are Karsten Feldman and Anton Stensby, who's won both of the bonification sprint points so far today. Also in there, Vincent van Hemelen, the Belgian, who leads in the King of the Mountains competition. He is the virtual race leader on the road, as he has been through most of today's stage. He sits second wheel there in the blue and yellow shorts with the peacock feather King of the Mountains jersey on his shoulders already, and seemingly unsurmountable actually, and getting ever closer to being the outright winner of that competition before we head towards tomorrow's final stage. And I suspect, Ian, that might be why we're seeing Van Hemelen doing some quite long hard turns on the front. He wants to get to Selvika. It's second category, it's not the all category of our climbs here. but it will be another opportunity for 3 more points. It comes with 15k to go to the finish, but that final climb is going to be brutal, and I do think these guys will be caught before then, not least because they've got 1 minute and 18 at the moment, and as you can see, there's cars being pushed past them in anticipation of that gap potentially coming down beneath a minute.
Yeah, sorry, I had that down as a first category climb to 6 points, but they've only awarded him 3 points, so something's wrong.
It's interesting. I was going with you, Ian, because on one of my bits of information, it says all category, and the other it says standard category. So maybe we'll go with what they've said on the screen. But we'll see afterwards. He won it anyway. That's the important thing. It's either 6 or 3. No one took any points back on him, so that's what matters, I guess, to a certain extent. What a fantastic shot. Looking at them from the Norwegian Sea as well into this bay.
It seems like every time they're down by the water's edge, the weather is actually okay, but as soon as they begin to climb up just straight into that low-lying cloud and that drizzle hits them, and unfortunately they're going up again in not too distant future. 13.9 kilometres to go. It is that Selvika summit, and then obviously finishing up the Havøysund summit as well. So 2 more points on this course where those riders are going to come into contact with that low cloud and the higher winds.
Yeah, and that bridge, I mentioned the deep dark red line on our VeloViewer mapping. The bridge itself over onto Havøysund is dark red, meaning it has literally block crosswind on it. They spill off that with just over 3 kilometres to go to the finish as they start the climb. So that bridge actually could be, depending on how long it is, I think it's about 600 metres, something like that, but it might be enough to make quite a difference in there if we have that big group together by that stage. They're going to have to catch these guys first, though.
That could be a great opportunity for anyone in that front group who doesn't see themselves kind of going to the top of that very final climb with the team leader, perhaps put in their final effort across that bridge to try and split things down further before they hit that final climb, because as soon as they come off the other side, they basically begin climbing.
That is our peloton as we look down on them. Just one race controller's car, one neutral service car, the blue Shimano car just behind them. And there's that little group who will be hopeful of getting back in. Behind them, the flotilla of electric vehicles with the bikes mounted sideways across them. All the vehicles on this race electric this year, including the motorbikes. Not a single, apparently, so we're told, not a single gas-guzzling vehicle out there. Of course, I'm not naive enough not to know that, of course, electricity comes from somewhere and has to be made somewhere. One of the things we're riding towards today is an absolutely enormous wind farm just on the edge of Havøysund. In fact, I think it has a big wind farm on it, and then off sea as well, off land as well, another wind farm, and then one beyond it as well. I think we're going to get a chance to see 16 turbines in total just beyond our finish line today, installed to create a capacity, maximum capacity of 57.6 megawatts. And this wind, no doubt, will be helping. This is the kind of place you want a wind farm, of course, not least in a place which is so windy and exposed, but also in a place which is so obviously impacted by global warming with the shrinking of the glaciers and what have you. And as we get towards the North Cape tomorrow, Nordkapp, for the finish of this race, we should get a chance to see some glaciers as well. It should be absolutely spectacular. I've actually raced across a glacier, Ian, in Pakistan. Rode in a mountain bike race in the Karakoram Mountains in the far north on the Afghan border. And part of it was a stage race. I think the 3rd or 4th stage, we actually raced across a glacier. Totally unrideable. Before you even got to it, you went across what do they call it? Like a boulder field. You had to climb over the boulder field, and you get to the glacier, and it's like, well, certainly for me, it was, well, I won't be riding on this. That's totally impossible. And so just basically carried my bike across a whole glacier, remounted and continued. Hardest thing I've done in my life. All up at sort of anywhere between 3,000 and 5,000 meters as well. Very high altitude, mostly unrideable. There's an awful lot of... I actually did all right because I was running with the bike most of the time, which maybe tells you something about why I should have just ditched the bike. Yeah, easily the hardest thing I've done. But glaciers... You ever ridden across a glacier? What about ice and snow? You must have done some ice and... ice and snow cross races, surely.
Yeah, plenty of ice and snow at Cross World Cups over the years, and very, very tricky and specific conditions, as we have the Val de Soleil World Cup almost every year now on the World Cup UCI cyclocross circuit that is taking place at the ski resort on snow and ice. So that cyclocross season kicking off fairly soon, beginning of October in Europe for those big races coming live on GCN Plus and Eurosport this winter.
Yeah, I think for those of us who we've talked about cross a little bit over the last few days, tried to semi-avoid it, going down the obvious route, but in a way, watching this, it kind of doesn't feel inappropriate to be talking about it, because it sort of feels a bit wintry as we watch the Arctic race of Norway. It's a wonderful race. It's certainly not the end of the road season by any means, but also the fact that we've just had this very early World Championship as well. It doesn't seem inappropriate to be talking about the end of the season. But we need to remind ourselves it's not late September, early October just yet. It is still August, despite the fact the Road World Championships have already happened in those mega worlds in Scotland.
No, it feels like Lombardie should be taking place this weekend.
Yeah.
But another month and a half or so until the Race of the Falling Leaves to kind of round out the season. Although, UCI race is taking place in China, what have you, all the way through October.
I think Mathieu van der Poel and Lotte Kopecky's first outings for their rainbow jerseys is set to be this Sunday in a criterium in the Netherlands, very lucrative annual criterium in the Netherlands. I believe both of them, certainly Van der Poel is riding, and I think Kopecky is too. So look out for shots, no doubt, of them in their rainbow bands. You expect to see Van der Poel in all white, surely. We've seen him in all white before, haven't we, as the Dutch national champion when he's riding for Corendon Circus. He's going to be in all white. He's going to be in all white all year, isn't he, Ian? Surely.
I'd have thought depending on the conditions, but not opposed to all white shorts, is he? As we've seen before. Didn't he win Amstel Gold wearing all white shorts?
Yes.
Yes,
he did.
I'd have thought he would break those out. And I'm sure both of them will win those criterium races next weekend.
How did you know that? How can you predict that, Ian? You're good. Yes, I'm sure they will win them somehow, and that'll be fluky and amazing in itself. Let's not forget, of course, that Mathieu van der Poel is also the world cyclocross champion. So he might well be able to, the current world cyclocross champion might well be able to swap his rainbow bands on the road for the cyclocross season. I think he'd already said actually that this criterium this weekend might well be his last road race of the year anyway. So there's a slim chance there. Then, therefore, we might see him start on the cyclocross circuit a little bit earlier than he normally does this year. That would be nice for the fans, because he's normally one of the he and Wout van Aert are normally those riders who sort of start their cross season at the moment in recent years around about Christmas time. So I wonder if that might be a nice little fillip for the cyclocross fans to get to see him a bit earlier.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see when the big three decide to kick off their normally reduced cyclocross seasons, as we see one of the little Trek riders and a Balois Flanders rider just asking to see their team car, whether they want final little bit of fueling with 20.6 kilometres to go, or just get rid of some layers before these final couple of climbs coming up. We've got a sprint point at 18.6 kilometres to go.
So with almost exactly 20 kilometres to go now, a very reduced chasing group, which contains, as far as Ian and I are aware, most of the pre-race favourites. However, I'm still not 100% certain that our leader, Noah Hobbs, is in there. And on paper, I hate to say it, particularly when talking about a British rider, despite the fact that I'm utterly impartial, as we all know, this could be the day where Noah Hobbs loses that race lead. Let's see, though. Let's see. He certainly was looking like he had good support from his Groupama FDG under-23 teammates there. This is the race to the sprint point, which comes at the base of the Selvika summit. So if they think it's been hard so far, they've got a little bit more to come as well. Interestingly enough, yeah, I wonder whether we might see Vincent van Hemelen go for this and then continue and try and get those mountains points, or whether he doesn't want to blow his legs off getting the bonus seconds, despite the fact that he's best placed in here. What do you reckon, Ian? What would you're his DS in the ear of our Peacock man. What would you say to him?
Given Stensby's won the previous 2 sprints and Van Hemelen has just tried to mop up anything that's kind of been left on the plate as such, I'd have thought same scenario for this final sprint. Just try not to waste any energy, but try and pick up any scraps that is left. It looks like he's the one that's trying to keep forcing the pace on these climbs when it does slow down ever so slightly, but does look the strongest in the breakaway probably, but has been Stensby mopping up these bonus seconds and bonus these sprint points along the way on today's stage.
Talking of mops and mopping up, I've got a feeling out camera motorbike camera operator there could do with a dry rag, because I know they've been wiping them as they go, but we're soaking wet here, and I think after a while, with enough wiping, your rag is wet and there's no point wiping it. So apologies for the slightly milky shots we're getting. I don't say this often enough, and I'm the son of a television cameraman who was a television cameraman for all of his working life, mostly working in sport, my dad. They have an incredibly hard job, and without them, we wouldn't even have any pictures to talk about, Ian and I as well. So I'm taking a massive hat off to all the outriders, and particularly the camera operators as well, who are sat on the back of those motorbikes, getting often freezing cold, soaking wet, and desperately trying to cling on in quite difficult conditions to bring us these shots. So, as I say, it's the son of a television cameraman. Big hats off to them, because they do an incredible job. Here we go. Anton Stensby sitting on the front, so I think he's possibly indicating his intent that he wants to take this one. Well, there's an opportunity here for Van Hemelen if he wanted to. Might be a bit naughty, but what do you reckon, Ian? Is he going to come and cough the... No, he's not, is he? There you go. Anton Stensby, the Norwegian rider for Team Coop, takes yet another set of 3 points and 3 seconds. That's 9 seconds he's picked up today. What's he shaking his head for? Oh, he's done. Is he done? Is that him done, do you think, Ian? Or is he... No, he's not. No, he's just... Oh. What's that all about? I thought he was going to sit up there and feed himself back into the bunch, but...
I think he just wanted the whole group to go past him so that he could get on the back and take a bit of rest, having pushed on into that headwind up to that final sprint point, taking those points and bonus seconds. Van Hemelen was only 11 seconds back at the beginning of the day, and he's picked up around about 6 seconds, is it, in these sprint points? So he's only going to be around kind of 5-6 seconds down on Noah Hobbs in terms of the overall. So interesting to kind of keep an eye on him, whether he can hold on to this group and see where he can get up that very final climb to the finish as DSM push on over the top of that sprint point, really lining things out behind. This is kind of a key point now. Just need to be positioned in that top 15, top 20 riders, because you never know. There's a slight kink in the road direction to pick up a crosswind and things could split again. All the riders are going to be tired at this point. This has been a attritional 3 days of racing, and these conditions are making it super tough for the riders just to stay warm, let alone put out a huge good performance in terms of physiology. Coming down now as we see our breakaway splitting up now, and it's Van Hemelen going across to one of the Team Coop riders.
Yeah, I don't think that is Stensby this time. Stensby's sitting back there. There he is. So this is his teammate, Carsten Feldman, who's gone ahead, and no doubt about it, Vincent Van Hemelen has got good legs, but he's also going across for good reason, because he wants to make sure that at the top of the Selvika summit, he is the leader. And he flicks his elbow for a little bit of help, looking back as well. Yeah, I don't think he's going to get it right now either. And of course, Feldman here can say, well, he might not be even needing to say it, but he's got a teammate behind him. 2.5 kilometres, I think it might have been, to the top of this second category climb, we'll call it, the Selvika summit.
Yeah, this climb's 2.6 kilometres in length for average gradient of 5.4%. So another tough, challenging climb, along with those winds making things extra hard. I'm sure Van Hemelen just wants to get to the top of this one and secure these 3 points at the top of this one, just to kind of try and secure himself that jersey heading into tomorrow's stage.
That curving concrete structure we saw there, by the way, is an elaborate walkway down to one of the most beautiful barbecue spots on the edge of the sea here, according to our guidebook. Feldman has sat up. In fact, Feldman has sat up and has been dropped from the breakaway completely. That is strange, Ian, because now Vincent Van Hemelen is left on the front of this group, desperately trying to survive. And I think you're right. I think he can, if he survives over the top of the Salvika summit, that's probably that King of the Mountains jersey won outright. The rest of them know that. They can sit on him. They don't need to help him at all, unless, of course, he appears to be weakening and they've got a little bit more to give. But he's looking for help, though, isn't he? Still a long way to go up there.
I think they're probably going to get caught now before the summit. Only 20 seconds. It looked like Feldman, his legs have completely fallen off. One thing to think about in these conditions, lots of layers on, big winter gloves, as we see. Who's that now? Is that Darnese?
He's done a lot, hasn't he? Ian, I thought when we saw the last shot of that group, I looked at that looks like Darnese back on the front again. He's done a lot for his team today. He's obviously got some form to burn this week.
He has, and doing a great job for his teammates, and he recognised the fact that he wasn't going to the end of this stage. He wasn't going to contest the finish of today's stage, so final bit of work done for the team on those climbs. But right now that breakaway splitting up and the gap just stabilising. Van Hemelen just doing all he can now to get to the top of this climb and pick up those points, like you say. But that peloton now looked like it was being driven by Cofidis. Guillaume Martin in second position. He's going to want to make it as hard as possible on these climbs. He's the pure climber probably within this peloton left. So he's going to want to make it as hard as possible every time this road ramps up now. Yeah, you see the two Cofidis riders on the front, all lined out behind.
Yeah, Guillaume Martin is sitting second wheel there. It will be really interesting. You're marking him out there, Ian, as one of the pure climbers in here, and he is, you're absolutely right. We see a coming together of him and Tobias Johannesson, the youngster. A bit of an age difference between those two, of course, as Guillaume Martin is 30 now, and Tobias Johannesson 23. There's our race leader, Noah Hobbs. Let's look up over his shoulder. How much help has he got? He's got a teammate dropping back to him. And they've still got quite a long way to go on this climb. It's saying the 1.1k is for our leaders, who are 22 seconds up the road ahead of them. Gosh, he's so close to surviving this, Noah Hobbs. The question is, what will this tell on his legs when they come to the final climb, the all-category climb to the finish at Havoisund? He's set on paper to lose the jersey today, but he is not giving up on it right now.
He's really digging in and showing that jersey a lot of respect, desperately trying to hang on to that leading group. But as I was saying previously, before we saw those shots of Darnese, it's been one of those tough days, winter gloves on perhaps and lots of layers. It's really difficult to get into your pockets and eat the normal amount of food that you'd want to on such an attritional stage. And we saw with Veldman, just all of a sudden his legs went bang, and that's the kind of thing that you begin to see when someone kind of hits the hunger knock, gets a sugar low, and just all the energy drains out of you. And I'm sure we've all been there on a climb when we've completely blown up and just gone backwards, and you just simply can't press on the pedals anymore, and you just have to survive until the finish.
I think he's going to make it. It's going to be so close for the Belgian in that peacock jersey. He's spread his wings and he's trying to fly. As we know, peacocks don't fly too well, but they look pretty doing it, and Van Hemelen is trying. 500 metres to go. Come on, let's be kind to the man. Leave him out. There is no need to catch it right now. But that is Simon Geschke, the bearded climber for Cofidis, who is trying to see if he can... Well, he's not trying to catch Van Hemelen before the top. They're just setting a pace at the front, aren't they, to set things up for the finale. Van Hemelen has gone. He's flown hard as well. This could well be, as Ian and I have been saying, his last effort to make sure he secures that jersey for good. And actually, in a way, it's very clear what he's doing as well. There's no great need, I'd have thought, at this stage. Ian, what do you reckon? Is there any love in a situation like this where, you know, Simon Gescher himself has been in a situation where he's lost a rather valuable King of the Mountains jersey, you know, might count for something in his emotional locker?
I'm sure it's that situation where Cofidis are just riding their tempo, riding the speed that they want to over the course of these final few hundred metres of the climb. As Van Hemelen does crest there, does take the points. Really pleased for him. He's shown some great legs this week and thoroughly deserves that King of the Mountains jersey on his back. But yeah, Cofidis, I'm sure they're just trying to get rid of anybody that's feeling it towards the end of this stage, and already they've managed to get rid of Noah Hobbs, the current yellow jersey wearer, as we see people grappling for the wheels ahead of them over the top of that climb now. It's going to be a short descent down and then across that bridge, as you've stated, and then that very final 3.5 kilometres all the way up to that finish. 2.2 kilometre categorised climb, average of 10%, kicking up to 14% in places. So a real tough climb to finish today's stage.
Riding out on this incredible road that takes the riders up to the far northwestern corner of Norway. And the blessing in that respect is that they have effectively, or they will have when they start the descent, sort of little hillocks on either side of them. They've got a field off to their left, right, or they will have in just a moment. But then as they approach the bridge, actually, they've got a little bit of protection from the wind from their left-hand side. The only problem with that is it means that as they spill off that and onto the bridge, they immediately have a really powerful crosswind from their left-hand side on the bridge. Let's look back down that group. Martin Urienstad is the Uno X rider just near the back there. And as we can see, that is right on the very back. Johan Ravnoy, the Norwegian Team Coupe rider, who we've seen on the break on day 1 and day 2 as well, Ravnoy. There is that field, the little lake to the left there, as I was talking about, and this is the descent. Van Hemelen, well now, he might find himself in an advantageous position here in account of Simon Gescher's generosity through his emotional locker or whatever happened. Van Hemelen, though, is flying on this descent, and he's now got nothing to lose, Ian, has he, to a certain extent?
No, he just needs to stay upright on this descent. I can't see him going all the way to the finish, but continues to press on. Maybe going for the most combative rider prize as well at the end of today's stage. But interesting now, who's going to take control of this race, heading down now towards that very final climb?
Well, on this descent now, little gaps are opening up too, with just over 10k to go, 11.3k to go. They're on the descent that takes them down into the interlocking spurs of these coastal hills, which are preparing themselves for the final bridge onto the last rocky outcrop, the island that has Havøysund. Let me say that again, Havøysund as its fishing town as you enter it, straight over the bridge into the town itself on Havøya Island. And one rider, possibly unexpectedly, finds himself still clear out the front, Vincent Van Hemelen. This was all about taking those final King of the Mountains points. You could argue that he's now thinking about the all-category final climb in Havøysund on the island, but he's got a bit of a way to go to that point. Once he's gone over the bridge, he's got about 3.5k to go, but pretty much all uphill on the top of the headland where that finish is. And the finish is straight. It's not unlike the last two finishes we've had have curved around bends, haven't they, Ian? And we've struggled at times from that finish line shot to see who's coming until they come around that final curve. This is much, much straighter, and I suspect they can probably see the finish line from the minute they turn away from the fishing village in Havøysund too.
I'm sure they would have wanted a slight curve in the finish today, because it does mean they're going to be having a block headwind all the way up that final climb up to that finish, so making those gradients even harder. But Van Hemelen just, if that time's right, pushing it out to 25 seconds again. How strong is Van Hemelen?
He is absolutely flying. And you've got to think as well that he's kind of boosted now, maybe, by the fact that he's, well, we presume, achieved his goal in this race of winning that King of the Mountains jersey, and now freed up to, why not? Well, if he survives to the finish, he'll get 6 maximum points on the finish line anyway, and the stage win. That is a monumental ask, though, because we know there are some very good climbers in here. We've talked about Guillaume Martin, Tobias Johannesson, and others. Why not Carl Frederick Hagen as well, if we include him amongst some of the best climbers in there? Stevie Williams, Dylan Turns, riders who are going to be well suited to this 2.5k climb proper. It's classified at 2 kilometres, but it really climbs all the way from the bridge. We'll say 2.5k minimum for this final climb, but in its midsection it goes up to around 13% as well. And as we know, this race is all about the attritional nature. The wind, the exposed nature, the cold, the rain. Of the pictures you saw from the finish line this morning, Ian, how much worse was it than what we're seeing in front of us right now? What I'm trying to anticipate is what we're about to climb up into.
Apocalyptic. It was horrendous at the top.
Oh, man.
So
right, okay.
Yeah, I can't imagine that cloud has lifted given what we've seen on the previous couple of summits. So yeah, expect your pictures to get a lot worse and the conditions for these riders to get a lot worse as they head up that final climb. One of the riders going back to talk to the commissaire. Not entirely sure whether he's just trying to get rid of some clothing rather than having to wait for his team car to come up and lose more time. But people discarding now with outer layers.
We might be readying ourselves for a that looks like Stephen Roach, it's Stephen Roach moment. Let's see, as we watch to see who emerges into that apocalyptic hilltop finish. It would be a shame, actually, if we're not able to see quite the beauty of it, because it is an incredible island from the pictures I've seen as well in the guidebook. It looks amazing, but weather conditions really conspiring against us today. Conspiring against each other, Uno X, Israel Premier Tech, Equipo Kern Farmer in the middle, and once again, that looks like Cyrus Monk of Q36.5. And I think this could be about Carl Frederick Hagen. I've not really seen him yet on this race. He's got a sort of slim, fresh face about him, slightly longer hair. He's another one of the redheads amongst these Norwegian riders. It's his home race. The 31-year-old goes well on a climb like this as well. But let's see. I don't even know if he's in there. They've got so little data on the makeup of this, peloton. Chasing peloton, that's what it is right here in front of us. We want to hazard a guess how many riders, Ian? We didn't check whether we were right yesterday. What do you reckon in there?
Yesterday, were we saying 70, 80? It turned out to be 70 riders left in that peloton. I'd hazard a guess at 45, 50 maybe?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd go with that. Something like 50. It's definitely grown a bit on the descent. Some of those distant groups we saw behind them as we looked over their shoulders, as we snaked our way around the headland, I think they have got back in. Uno X on our side. Guillaume Martin there, I think, sitting on the tail end of the Uno X riders. I wonder whether he has picked up the back wheel of Tobias Johannesson. They do have another ace up their sleeve, by the way, of course, and that is the Danish rider, Jonas Gregor, who had been in a bit of difficulty. I think it was yesterday. Just trying to see. Of course, we can't see any numbers on their backs. They're also well wrapped up as well. And then Little Trek off to the right. Little Trek to the right. Israel Premier Tech in the middle. Q36.5 in the black and the silvery grey. And DSM just alongside Uno X as well, also up in full numbers. .5k to go. They've got this sweeping left-hander, and as I said, they are currently protected actually from the wind from their left-hand side, as I thought they would be, by that rock face. They're just making their way alongside. They've got a little descent here as well. and then they'll turn to see the bay, and they'll actually see in front of them through the murk Havoisund, the fishing village itself across the bridge. Then they'll turn hard right onto the bridge. Remember the bridge. Ian, 41 seconds. Vincent van Hemelen might be onto something here.
This is a super strong ride, and they're not going to bring it down much on this descent, but I'm sure as soon as we hit those very steep slopes on that final climb that, yeah, he's had a number of hard days. So not only being in the breakaway all day today, he was in that breakaway all day yesterday. It's got to hit him at some point, and I'm sure as soon as some of these big names really attack on that final climb, that gap will tumble down. What I'm really interested to see if one of these teams really wants to hit it across that bridge, where we'll get that strong crosswind before the very final climb. Whether someone wants to take it up a little bit early, that's going to be a big question. But all the big teams looking attentive, coming to the fore, keeping their protective riders well hidden.
Well, it's been a hard day today, but it hasn't actually been quite the sort out we thought it might have been. Don't forget that Ian Field and I have been calling this the Queen Stage. Maybe it is all going to come down to tomorrow, but let's see the kind of gaps we get on the final climb. Once we're on to the island of Havoya and Havoisund itself, to the finish, which is right at the high point of the island. Attack here coming from Israel Premiertech. Or is it a lifting? No, more of a lifting and the following of wheels. This looks like Daryl Impey again. Yes, it is. The South African rider just lifts things into. We're getting something of a mini echelon forming there, Ian, by the looks of it. I think they've got a bit of wind pushing now. Now they're away from the exposed edge, pushing from their left. They'll be feeling it already, pushing them over to the right-hand side of the road.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about. Maybe one of the teams anticipating things and trying to split it down before we even get to that climb. But as you see now with our leader, they're going to be behind that kind of rocky outcrop once again in a few moments' time. And so that small acceleration from Daryl Impey won't really come to much unless he keeps it going down this descent and up the other side. But we are rapidly approaching that bridge section now. So I think maybe showed their cards a little bit too early there. As we see now the images of that bridge, it climbs up to that bridge, and it's going to hit huge crosswinds as they go over there. And then once we're over the other side of that, it's climbing all the way to the line.
Oh yes, this is them leaving the Norwegian mainland, as they did yesterday when they rode over onto the Kvaløya to finish in Hammerfest. We left Hammerfest this afternoon and are racing again off the mainland, over the bridge as we're about to see it, in the direction of our finish in Havoisund. Once they get off the end of the bridge, there'll be about 3.5k to go, something like that. And what a ride we're seeing by Vincent van Hemelen, the 22-year-old Belgian from Herentals in Belgium. A Flandrian, of course, as they all are at Team Flanders Baloise, and he is in his element here today. Hoovered up all the mountains points so far today, went for the last one, and then of course saw an opportunity to persist, and this is quite some ride by him. However, here comes an acceleration. Looking at the colours, I'm not sure that isn't Group Armour FDG there. Looking at the dark blue, I might be wrong, Ian. It's not the easiest of shots to see from here, and I've got a feeling we might not be getting a shot on the bridge either. They've definitely lifted at a point where they knew they'd have a crosswind, and that isn't the 700 metres I thought it would be. That's more like 400, 300 metres, that bridge. And jeopardy gone. It's going to be all about the climb and the headwind climb as well, by the looks of it. Let's hope they keep it sensible through here, because these are pretty wet, slippery roads, and we're about to climb up into the apocalyptic finish, as Ian Field has described it. Let's hope it's gnarly, because I think it might be. All to sort out, and one man on an incredible ride, Vincent van Hemelen. 11 seconds the gap. We should see them any moment now. Empty the tank time, isn't it? He may as well just absolutely go for it now, Ian.
Yeah, he's hit the lower slopes now, so yeah, kind of 1%, 3%, 2% kind of all the way until around about 2.2 kilometres to go, and then it ramps immediately up to around 10%, hitting 14% in places as he's on those now, just straight into the climb. As I said, it's a block headwind all the way, which might nullify things ever so slightly, but the gradients are steep and the strongest will come to the fore.
Now they're climbing out of the beautiful fishing village in Havøysund and up to the headland, well away from all these houses and buildings. It won't be looking like that by the time we get to the top. It's brutal and exposed up there. Here come Israel Premier Tech in the middle, in good numbers too. Where is Dylan Turns, and is it about him, or is it Stevie Williams? Look out for the Welshman, 27-year-old Welshman. I was going to call him a young man. He's relatively young. But here's Vincent van Hemelen back in the fold. King of the Mountains jersey almost completely won going into the final day tomorrow. Brilliant day out. Great late attack. There won't be much opportunity for anyone to shout across and say, well done, mate. But I think he'll have the respect of the peloton there because he had a big, big day out. And he was a big reason why that breakaway survived as long as it did, of course. Uno X take it up at the front. The Norwegian national champion, Frederik de Vernes, on the front. But they're down to, I think, 3 riders. Question is that third rider Tobias Johannesson, former winner of the Tour de l'Avenir? I think it is. It looks like his form. Guillaume Martin quite a bit further down. Sorry, Ian. I'm just saying, Martin down at about 15th, 20th.
Yeah, as I was about to say, 4 Israel riders in there, so well numbered, and that could make the difference into this headwind as they pick up a slight crosswind on this slightly exposed section, but they will turn kind of back into that block headwind once again, and numbers into a headwind will help. They'll just try and take their designated team leader, their climber, as far as they can. One of the Israel riders peels off, and Daryl Impey peels off to the side. His job done for the day, just 2 kilometres of pure climbing to come.
Frederik de Vernes continues, the Norwegian national champion, getting a wonderful opportunity to show off that jersey at its best. I apologise for the fact that by the looks of it, our picture has frozen as we get a little bit further up the climb. There we go. Thankfully, it's unfrozen now. Dario Frigo, I think it is, for Israel Premier Tech now, who takes over on the front, the Italian. Marco Frigo, I should say, not Dario Frigo, dearie me. There is Guillaume Martin in that red top for Cofidis, moving up on the outside. I think he's lost Simon Geschke now as well. Frigo here, doing a good long hard turn. What a fantastic shot looking down this climb. You get an idea of where we're going right now. 1,700 metres to go. Once again, the picture freezes. I'm awfully sorry about this. Looking at the back of the field, these are now the riders who are out of it. Look how quickly Frederik de Vernes has gone from the front to the back. Frigo continues, and he has got behind him Stevie Williams on the right. That's definitely Stevie Williams, the taller figure for Israel Premier Tech. Just looking around there by the look of it. And
Dylan Turns, the third rider of the Israel Premier Tech riders. I think this climb with this headwind is just kind of nullifying the pure climbers going on the attack into the headwind. It's going to become like a real strongman's climb all the way to the top. I think that's yesterday's winner in there as well from the Astana team. Took out the win. Gazzoli is in 4th wheel. So we see riders getting dropped all the way up this climb now. That's Baroncini out the back for Little Trek.
Yep, Gazzoli there in that very light blue of Astana Kazakhstan team. And I think by the looks of it, Uno X are looking at the moment to see where Tobias Johannesson is. He's sitting about 4th wheel, just on the back of Stevie Williams. But I think he's losing wheels, Johannesson. And he's got his teammate on the front looking to see where he is. Johannesson is the next of the Uno X riders here. Guillaume Martin, the French climber, up on the outside, 10th in the Tour de France this year. No sunglasses on, red sleeves. He's just off to the left-hand side. Someone who's strong enough and has got a bit of snap left in their locker here has got a good opportunity to get a bit of a gap on this. But I think we can see how hard it is. This is the steepest part where it's about 13% as well. Who else have we not mentioned in there? There's a coupe rider riding well right up near the front as well. That is Cedric Christoffersen up on the left-hand side with the blue jersey on. Christoffersen just moving up on the back wheel of Carl Fredrik Hagen, the Q36.5 rider there with the black gilet on the left-hand side. Tobias Johannesson has found the back wheel again. And he's gone to the front now as well, Johannesson. These are slightly bumpy shots as we pick out who's at the front there. I think you're right. I think that is Michele Gazzoli there with 1K to go, Ian, who's now moved up the Astana rider. This is like slow motion racing this. This is a really hard and worthy final climb at this stage, but you get a sense there's a few in there. As it starts to lessen a little bit, the gradient, you might still have something left.
Yeah, with around 500 metres to go, it does ease ever so slightly to around 8% rather than those 13-14% that the riders have just done. Dylan Toynes looking very, very good up out the saddle now on the right-hand side of the picture.
Yeah, he's got Stevie Williams over to the left as well. They don't want to mark each other out, those two, but they're split across the road. Toynes, as you say, on the left there as we look at them now. The two NOX boys in the middle are Jonas Gregor and Tobias Johannesson. They've got to sort this out between them. I think this might be Gregor who's going for it at this point. And once again, looking down on them, we can't see any numbers at all. Is that Toynes who's followed him?
Toynes in second.
Yes.
He looks really, really strong. This climb should suit a rider like him, given his Palmares and what he's done in the past on these finishing climbs. But right now, he looks the pick of the bunch for me.
Yeah, Roger Adria, I think, is the Kerm Farmer rider who's moving up in the green there. He looks like he's got something left in the locker as well. That's Simon Geschke right at the back of that group. The red jersey also moving up well. Guillaume Martin on the left-hand side. That all-red long-sleeve jersey. He looks good. Who's that DSM rider that's in there? Is that Dinham, maybe? Yeah, it might be Matt Dinham in the middle riders there. You'll forgive us, folks, by the way, because it is really hard to pick them out in amongst this lot as well. Yeah, that is Gazzoli. Michele Gazzoli there for Astana, Kazakhstan. Yesterday's winner, pretty certain that's him. Of course, we can't see his race number.
Odd Christian Eiking moving up on the right-hand side now. Easily spotted with the EF Education Easy Post helmet on, the pink two-tone helmet. Riding for the Norwegian team. He's come up on the left-hand side as we look at it. Guillaume Martin just behind him, but things just beginning to pick up now with 500 metres to go. The gradient does ease ever so slightly over the top of this one.
It is Uno X's Tobias Johannesson on the left now. Looking like he is now their favoured rider once Jonas Gregor has dropped off. He's got the yellow cap on under his helmet, the casquette. Dylan Toynes alongside him there in the purple and white of Israel Premier Tech. One of the Trinity riders moving up too here as well, looking good. Here comes Guillaume Martin in the red though. Martin has a very fine turn of speed, but Dylan Toynes has lifted it. And actually it looks like Tobias Johannesson is in good form, but also Michele Gazzoli, yesterday's winner. Are we going to see a repeat of yesterday's win? The Astana man is right there and ready. Dylan Toynes, we know, has got a brilliant sprint finish. We've seen it at Flèche Wallonne when he took that. Arkea Samsic, Clément Champoussin is there. Clément Champoussin, who took a top 10 on stage one. Was he fourth, I think? He's very close. Dylan Toynes is ready to launch. Last 200 metres, but yesterday's winner, Michele Gazzoli, is ready. He looks really good as well. Clément Champoussin of Arkea Samsic is ready to launch. Tobias Johannesson is going. This is a proper slow motion sprint, this one, between, by the looks of it, yesterday's winner. Dylan Toynes as well. Has he got enough left? I think we're going to have a double winner here with Gazzoli, Champoussin right on the line. Dylan Toynes, if he can hang on. Oh, no, it's Stevie not Dylan Williams. Toynes. I do apologise. Stevie Williams has come up right in the right moment. British rider, Welshman, Stevie Williams. I do apologise. I think he took over there from Dylan Toynes, didn't he, up on the right-hand side of the road, and Stevie Williams gets the win.
I think Stevie Williams took that one, and I think maybe the Astana rider called it a bit wrong. It might have been Scaroni, yesterday's second place finisher. So all changed. Dylan Toynes just let it out for me a little bit too early. Perhaps the idea was for Stevie Williams, but with that block headwind, I think he just went a little bit early and just gave the perfect lead out in the end to all the riders who were lined up behind him. But luckily for him, Stevie Williams was there as well and was able to come off the wheel and take that one in what was just a pure slow motion sprint in the end.
Gosh, wasn't it? I wondered whether we had another problem with our pictures there, Ian. It was so slow, so slow. It's got to be one of the slowest, most drawn-out sprints I've ever commentated on. What a ride by him, though. Absolutely brilliant. Stevie Williams getting, I think, what will be the fourth win of his professional career, certainly at this level anyway. He was a winner, of course, overall at the Crow race, taking a stage in that too, but he's also won a stage of the Tour de Suisse, and that one of the biggest of all under-23 races, the Ronde de l'Izard as well. But today, well, along with his general classification win at the Crow race, that's the biggest win of his professional career, and a good one as well. Israel Premier Tech put a lot into that, and they can be absolutely delighted too. Now, King of the Mountains, Vincent van Hemelen, the Belgian, there coming across the line in his jersey. What a ride by him today. If he is not the super combative rider of the day, Ian, then something has gone badly wrong. And it wouldn't be the first time we see a very obvious pick not get it. And it goes to somebody, dare I say it, Norwegian, maybe? But he definitely deserves it. Clément Champoussin, hang on for second there. I thought he had it at one point, the RKS Samsic man. He was wrapped up like he was out for a ride in midwinter. Clément Champoussin, again showing what a fine sprint he has. It was Christian Scaroni, well spotted for Astana in third. Tobias Johannesson fading there to finish fourth. And Dylan Turns, who I called as the winner, actually hanging on for fifth. This is Martin Urienstad, having worked well for his team early on today, coming across the line to hear of Tobias Johannesson's fifth place, did I say it was there? But, well, I don't think we're going to have a British leader in Noah Hobbs. We started the day with a British leader of this race in the Midnight Sun jersey. We saw him dropping off, but he did a great battle. We'll look to see where he comes in on this stage. But there is a British winner today, the Welshman, Stevie Williams, who's had a difficult path to this point in his career, hasn't he? And with injury and come back from injury as well, his talent and his ability, particularly on finishes like this, absolutely undoubted. And weirdly enough, seeing him coming together and being very close to his own teammate, Dylan Turns there, Stevie Williams and Dylan Turns, very similarly gifted riders, I guess, in the way that they climb. Here comes our race leader coming in today, Noah Hobbs. Acquitted himself really well as an outright sprinter today. He hasn't lost tons of time, has he, Ian?
No, really good ride from Noah Hobbs. Did the jersey proud, and yeah, just distanced on that penultimate climb, and yeah, brilliant ride from the youngster. Huge learning experience having that yellow jersey on his shoulders. Just trying to work out who potentially is leading this race overall now. It might be Christian Scaroni. Yes,
he was up there after yesterday, wasn't he? Let's bear in mind we've got to take into account, of course, those bonus seconds as we see Noah Hobbs getting congratulations of his teammates as well for a valiant battle.
The Trinity rider was Liam Johnston, finishing that off in 13th place. A cracking ride from the young Trinity rider there.
Yeah, especially considering he was in the breakaway 2 days ago, wasn't he? And was the last late attacker from that breakaway on stage one. Let's watch it again from on high. It might look a bit better from on high because the shot from the front coming to the finish and left us with pretty much nothing to call. What are we seeing here?
It was Dylan Turns who led it out from a long way out. Johannesson went, Scaroni tried to block him off almost, and it was Champoussin who was balked a little bit, but Stevie Williams just got a really good run up on the wheel of his teammate and round to the left, and just carried that speed all the way over the top and took it, not easily in the end, but fairly convincingly from Champoussin. Interesting to see if Champoussin hadn't been balked there. He kind of rode into the gap where everyone was. Just had to back off and lost all his speed, and I think that was probably the difference on the line. It was Roger Adria coming in behind those front five. Is that Kevin Van Marker as well back there? Matt Dinham, sorry. That was Matt Dinham. Kevin Van Marker was the second DSM rider there behind them.
Well, very tired looking Stevie Williams there, Welshman. When he's had a chance to catch his breath already, sure, delighted with that. Another step up in his career. I wonder where that will put him on general classification, actually. This is all the great unknown at the moment. We wait to see. Rather than us working it out and sitting here thinking we've got it, I think Stevie Williams has got a very good chance of going into the lead. He is yesterday's winner. It was we were wondering whether it was him that was up here today, but it was Scaroni instead. Michele Gazzoli, yesterday's winner, coming into the finish for Astana, Kazakhstan. I'm seeing on Tinterweb that it's Stevie Williams who's going to be taking over that yellow jersey. And it's going to be very close between him and Christian Scaroni. Of course, I should say Midnight Sun jersey. It's not a yellow jersey. Yellow to orange fade. But it won't be Noah Hobbs, despite the fact that he's ridden so well in this race and battled manfully today. And I say manfully because he is but a boy, the teenager. There's the classification for the stage, and you can see that little Midnight Sun jersey off to the right-hand side of Stevie Williams' name. Stephen Williams takes over as race leader. Christian Scaroni second on the stage. That's the general classification. Done it again, haven't I? I should really start reading from the top. Tobias Johannesson now up into third. Kevin Van Marker in fourth, the first of the DSM riders. Dylan Turns in fifth. Matthew Dinham, the next of the DSM riders, in sixth. Well, it's proved to be a Queen Stage sort of finish and a sort out that's given us still a very, very close general classification going into the final day tomorrow, Ian. It's going to... You'd expect me to say this as I look to build the drama ahead of tomorrow's final stage, but that is exactly how it's going to be on the run into North Cape tomorrow.
Yeah, we're going to have 8 riders within 12 seconds of the lead. So we've got, Stevie Williams leading. I'd given Scaroni an extra bonus second on the line, so didn't go into yellow. In fact, he's 1 second behind. Johannesson there, 9 seconds down. Kevin Van Marker, 11 seconds. And then we got 4 riders at 12 seconds. Dylan Toynes, Matt Dinham, Guillaume Martin and Roger Adria. So all to play for, really, for the top 8 riders. Gaps open up slightly after that, down to kind of 19, 20 seconds for our 9th and 10th riders on GC. So, like you say, all to play for tomorrow. Very tough stage and another tough finish to tomorrow's stage.
Yeah, odd Christian Eiking. Interesting, we talked about the time he'd lost yesterday. He popped up with that pink EF helmet on, didn't we? I thought, hang on a minute, maybe the legs are going a little bit better than we thought. Finishing in the end just outside the top 10 in 11th, riding as the leader, certainly in terms of general classification now for the Norway national team. But after the time he lost yesterday, he might well not be their leader. I'll look to see who their best place rider is. But he was their best finisher today for the Norwegian national team. 2 of the Trinity riders coming in here, Camilo Gomez and Will Smith in the rain jacket, in company of 4 or 5 other riders as well. And it actually, things have cleared up a bit up here, Ian. In your what was it? Apocalyptic. Look at it. Looks like a seaside ride up to the cliff top. Beautiful. The weather has shifted, hasn't it? It's been blown over by the... Maybe it had blown over in the direction in which they were coming.
Yeah, definitely not as bad as it looked on social media earlier, but yeah, as we sit here in the comfort of our chairs, I'm sure the riders have a different opinion of how hard and how bad that weather was, but look at that sunlight on the headland now. Absolutely beautiful.
We get a chance to watch them again. All this work that's been done by the home team, the Scandinavian team, the Danish, Norwegian team of Uno X, everything being put into this by Jonas Gregor and Tobias Johannesson. Johannesson it was here who'd taken over at this point. I wondered whether we were going to see Guillaume Martin come up. In the end, he took 8th in that long sleeve red jersey. Possibly not in quite the form he was in at the Tour de France, Guillaume Martin, but also being out-snapped by some very snappy riders here as well. Matt Dinham, the DSM rider, right in the middle there. And it was that crossing over of Stevie Williams and Dylan Turns just after this. Dylan Turns leading at this point, and there was a bit of a switch, wasn't there, when Stevie Williams came round him, and that was the point at which I didn't quite see that and continued to call it as Turns, because Turns at this stage... This looks even more now like a... Would you call this a lead-out, Ian? Is he leading out Stevie Williams, or is this just him going to the finish?
You'd have to ask him that, but
yeah, I don't know.
It looked like he was just going for the finish.
Yeah.
He wasn't looking around at all, but it was just that headwind. You see that flag fluttering right in the rider's face. It's just really nullified any longer attack and really nullified it for the pure climbers like Guillaume Matin. It just made it a real slog up that final few hundred metres to the line, made it very difficult for anybody to break the elastic, get away. But I think no one can deny one of the strongest men on the day who took that one out, Stevie Williams.
Yeah, we're reminded once again of just what a good final sprint Clément Champoussin has. He's a very fine climber, but does pack a very useful sprint, the 25-year-old. Again, second. Where was he on stage one? He was third in the stage one uphill sprint. It was nowhere near as hard as that. And bear in mind, he was third to Alberto Dainese and Noah Hobbs. I would have Clément Champoussin down actually as a... Well, actually, best of times, I'd have him down as a pure climber. But he has got a really good turn of speed and was very, very close to the win there. It's remarkable that at this level, he only has one professional victory. He has, of course, won a stage of the Vuelta, so it's a biggie. But very, very close to the win again today, and obviously in good form, Clément Champoussin. So maybe the Arkea Samsic man will look to try and get something out of tomorrow. What a wonderful shot, looking back across the island, down to the fishing village of Havøysund. It's a beautiful village by all accounts. You can see it there. Much more traditional, I guess, in the layout of its houses, spread around the little roads which make their way up it. Housed, of course, most of them, to fishing families. Fishing is the prime industry from here. Coastal fishing as well, not field and river fishing, but heading out to sea as well, northwards and out into the Norwegian Sea too. I'm glad we got to see that in all its beauty. I was worried we'd be treated to this kind of race coming through thick fog and rain up here, but actually it's cleared up even since the riders have arrived. You can just hear in the background, we're just about to bring you our podium presentation, so do stay with us and get a chance to see Stevie Williams. There we go, the Welshman from Aberystwyth, 27-year-old. I think delighted, but also a bit tired, because it's been a hard day out.
Tired and very cold by the looks of things.
Look at that, this late afternoon, early evening sunshine. Of course, it lasts well into the night as well, because this is the land of the midnight sun this time of the year. Absolutely spectacular, and tomorrow is going to be incredible as well. Ian and I will be particularly chipper if the England women's team win the World Cup final tomorrow, which I'm sure they will. Good luck to them. Good luck to all of you this evening. Thank you for joining us for this penultimate stage, and do join us for the big finale tomorrow. From me, Jez Cox, and from Ian Field, thank you and goodbye. For those of you who are still with us, we should be able to bring you a few more of our podium presentation, more of this wonderful live shots looking down on the fishing port of Havøysund. I make them the most beautiful shots we've seen so far. And Stevie Williams will make this one of the most beautiful shots of his career so far. Him on the podium in the leader's jersey of the Arctic race of Norway. As I say, he won the Crow race. I think he won that on the Queen stage and the penultimate stage, going on the attack by himself, if I remember correctly, as well. I was sharing commentary of that Crow race in 2021 with Carlton Kirby. We did a couple of days each, and I didn't get to commentate on the finale, but Stevie Williams was the winner. Can he do it again here? It's a similarly tough day tomorrow, Ian, but he has 1 second over Scaroni. It'd be interesting to see whether Astana muster behind Scaroni and try and do something from a team perspective that we haven't really seen them do so far.
Yes. Got to be all for Scaroni now. The only thing is, has anyone in that team got the legs to really help him over that terrain? I think he was the only Astana rider, as we see one of the Astana riders still coming in now. That's been a long day out, 16 minutes down. So, yeah, you've got to have the legs to be able to help your teammates out when the road heads uphill. There's a couple of climbs towards the end of tomorrow's stage, so it might be difficult for Scaroni, but looks like he's pretty damn good at surfing the wheels and sniffing out a result for himself. So Israel look like they have the strongest team in terms of that GC battle between those two riders. I'm sure Uno X might sit back a little bit tomorrow and just try and hit really hard towards the end of the stage. They look really strong all week and currently have nothing to show for all their hard work.
This man, what a ride by him. At one stage, we were really thinking he had a chance of hanging on. He made it to the final climb alone, having taken all the points today on all the climbs except the finale. But what a ride by him. He didn't finish that far down either. He'll have moved down general classification a little bit, purely on the fact that he'd, well, winged it all. He'd thrown it all to the wind after that final King of the Mountains point, and that's where he stands. Look at that. 26 points over Johan Ravnoy's 9 points. So that confirms it for us. He will win that Jersey classification just by finishing tomorrow, because that is unassailable tomorrow. Despite the fact we have so many climbs as well. We start with a classified climb tomorrow of Skadi Summit, because we start again tomorrow in Kvalsund and ride out on exactly the same roads we rode out on today. Let's not forget that. And this is him being awarded as the most combative, and that is definitely right. I was worried that he might not get it for some odd reason. Absolutely right that he did. What a ride by him today.
Thoroughly deserved. And I'd like to point out my maths were correct earlier in the stage, and the graphics guys got it wrong, so one up to me.
Good work on the mathematical front. The all category climb in the middle there. Tomorrow's early climb, Skadi Summit, I would not be surprised to see Vincent van Hemelen take that, just for the sheer authority stamping that it would give him, and then that might be the last of him we see tomorrow. But let's see, because we have 2 more categorised climbs, but right at the very end, before we reach the North Cape tomorrow. They come at Skipsfjord Summit and Vestfjordelet Summit, which both come within the last 21k. In fact, that last one, the all-category Vestfjordelet, is 7k to go from the top. There's a little undulation, then another rise to the finish. The final rise at Nordkap, the North Cape, is not as long as today, but it's a steep little kick, and it has a ramp before it too. So it's going to be a very worthy finale tomorrow. That's the points classification. Christian Scaroni does have something to show for today and the last 2 days by taking over the lead in the blue jersey competition for points. And that's the broom wagon. I'm actually surprised, Ian, that there aren't a few bit further behind, but these two, this was the last of the Uno X riders who dropped off a bit earlier. These two just riding ahead of the broom wagon, as it says on the front of the van there, and that is all the race in. I don't know if we've lost anyone today. We'll be able to confirm that for you tomorrow, folks at home. But that's everyone in that's finishing today anyway. I don't see anyone sitting in the back of the broom wagon, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, well within the time limit as well. Still 9.5 minutes remaining before anyone else could have come in. But another tough day out for those 2 riders.
Well, it's been a tough day out for all these riders. What a spectacular view too. Again, 6 riders clear. Full double the first of them to drop. But that man, Vincent van Hemelen, who'd done everything today to get as many points as he could. That's exactly what he did. He's won that jersey. He's just got to finish tomorrow. Now, 6 riders eventually were doomed, of course, and then this happened at the finale. Israel Premier Tech setting things up. And a really tough penultimate day. Stevie Williams of Wales taking the win. We're so good, in fact, that win, we're going to see it twice. See you tomorrow for the final stage of this, the 10th edition of the Arctic Race of Norway.